Hello, everyone. I want to open the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of August 17th, 2020 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, before we begin the hearing tonight on Maitland Fothergill, I want to have the rest of the agenda, with the exception of public forum, moved up so we can get that out of the way.
Move that we move the consent agenda, the town manager's report, and new business to the beginning of the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sharon, I don't know if did I hear you? Sharon, you out there?
Yeah,
Okay, I just didn't hear you. Okay.
I say it at the same time everybody else does.
Okay. All right, so first up, consent agenda. Approve the July 20th, 2020 transcript as a hearing regarding New Frontier LLC Class BV liquor license, set November 2nd, 2020 as a hearing date for renewal of liquor licenses and victualling licenses, set December 7th, 2020 as a hearing date for the renewal of holiday sales licenses, except the following monthly financial activity report. Town clerk. Approve real property abatement due to a correction to the exemption for specially adapted housing submitted by the tax assessor. Approve refund as a result of overpayment by a taxpayer on 2019 tangible tax submitted by the tax collector.
So moved.
Okay, motion was made and
Second.
seconded. Anything need to be pulled, folks? Are we good? Okay.
good.
Okay, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Next up, town manager report, Bill McGarry.
Thank you. I have 4 different items underneath my report. The first one is COVID-19 restrictions. The second is the Crandall House Playground. The third is the Stubbtown Road landfill. And the fourth and last one is the DPW dump truck. With respect to COVID-19, the town continues to conform with the governor's many executive orders restricting normal municipal government operations. The town buildings remain locked and access is by appointment only, online communications, or through the use of a Dropbox. A recent Rhode Island League and City of Town survey that elicited 33 responses by Rhode Island cities and towns revealed that 55% of the Rhode Island cities and towns offices are still locked with limited hours and access. The governor has recently extended phase 3 for another 30 days because of an uptick in the number of coronavirus cases. And we are currently on our 8th declaration of a local emergency that will expire on August 31st of this year. Secondly, Crandall House Playground. In continuing our efforts to replace the Crandall House Playground, a meeting was held on August 13th to discuss the work that needs to be undertaken. As you're aware, the town secured a $295,861 grant from Rhode Island DEM under the Green Economy and Clean Water Bond for a period of time of July 1st this year through June 30th of 2023. Drainage plans are currently being drawn up by Crossman Engineering with removal of the old tennis court and the existing playground by the Department of Public Works in Hopkinton. Specifications are currently being prepared for the future issuance of an RFP for the purchase and installation of the new playground facilities. And number 3, Stubbtown Road landfill. It's still a work in progress. On July 6th, the town council voted to authorize the issuance of an RFP for phase 2 parcel. Jim Lanfair prepared the initial draft of an RFP. I have it on my desk now, I'm about halfway through it. And once we finish it, we'll send it back to our consulting engineers, Crossman Engineering and Hoffman Engineering, Rhode Island DEM officials, Jim Lanfair, and the Office of the Energy Resources in order to get their final okay. And then we'll go out with the RFP. And the next step after that is to sign a lease agreement. There's still a lot of work to be done. This is only phase 2. It's a very complex, long-term strategic plan that's going to take probably between 24 and 36 months before it's finally concluded. And lastly, with the assistance of DPW Director Tim Teft, I prepared an RFP for the lease of the new heavy-duty dump truck with a combination body and snowplow attached. This RFP is scheduled to be advertised in the Providence Journal and the Wesley Sun on August 23rd. Bids open on September 14th and a bid award on September 21st. The vehicle is being funded through the town's capital improvement plan in the amount of $172,687 over a 3-year period, and that's a lease arrangement. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Sharon, any questions for Bill? Because I know you're out there.
Nope.
Okay,
I'm fine.
okay. Anyone in the council chambers have a question for Bill? Barbara? Yeah, use the mic.
I have one question for you, Bill. When do you think the plow and the new dump truck will be within Hopkinton? Is that going to be next spring? Because I know that's not very fast.
Yes, my understanding for a truck of that size with all those many and diverse specifications, it takes about 6 months to build that truck. So hopefully we'll probably get it probably after the first of the year.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, Sylvia has a question for Bill.
Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's a question, it's a comment. In reference to the Crandall House Playground and the grant that we've received, I know there's a lot of, from time to time, we hear comments about, the town really needs to go after grants. That's something that's out there. And I'd like to point out that there are so many different grants that we've been lucky to get here in town. And I have to say, under the leadership of Bill McGarry, we've gotten, just not counting everything up, just in the past couple of three years or so, we've gotten $1.3 million in grants for both playgrounds at both ends of the town. The grant that paved Fairview Avenue, and that's 1.3 million.
All by itself.
All by itself, just those. And of course, there've been other grants. So I just wanted to point that out that, thank you, Bill.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. And Jim Lanfair has also been a great asset to that too.
Yeah, CDBG and
CDBG grants, and he's done a good job like that. It's really been a team effort, and we do get a lot from recreation too. On the
Absolutely.
recreation grants.
So we do. Yep.
Thank you.
okay. All right, thank you, Bill. All right, next up, new business, discuss and consider scheduling a hearing date for a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment and zoning ordinance amendment filed by Camoli Granite Company, 4 Chase Hill Road, Ashaway, Rhode Island, 02804, and Centrica Business Solutions, 1484 Candlewood Road, Suite T through W, Hanover, Maryland, 21078, for property owned by Camoli Granite Company located on Chase Hill Road, identified as a portion of Assessors Plat 2, Lot 73 in RFR 80 zone. Marita, what are your thoughts on the schedule of that?
It has to be advertised for 3 weeks, so the soonest it could be heard would be October 5th.
Okay.
I can't hear her.
Okay, talk in the mic, Marita, please.
That needs to be advertised for 3 weeks, so the soonest that can be heard would be October 5th.
I'm fine with that.
I've got a question for you. Now October 5th is a regular council meeting.
Correct.
If we want to do this sooner, we could perhaps, and you'd have to look at your calendar, can we call a special night, for instance, in September? And because there's a lot on our plate, there's a lot coming up. And, it just seems reasonable to have that sooner. And I wondered what time at the end, sometime in September, could we, given you need to advertise it for 3 weeks? Because it's today, the 17th?
17th, yeah.
Yep.
And I would agree with Sylvia. If we can do it as a special meeting, I think that would be good.
What were you saying?
Well,
Liz?
the problem,
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
this is Kevin Mc. As Marita said, the problem is by statute, which is 452453A. Before we can have a hearing, you have to give notice in a publication, a newspaper of general circulation, at least once a week for 3 successive weeks prior to the date of the hearing. And then there's notice that has to go out to the abutters and so forth. Also, notice has to go to the statewide planning program at least 2 weeks ahead of time. So there's a lot of deadlines for each of these advertising dates that the newspapers set. For example, that if you get too aggressive in picking a date before, I think Maria said the earliest it could be done is October 5th. Just remember, you can't control how these publications work. So it's a great idea to have a special meeting, but not necessarily too much before October 5th is how I would summarize that.
Well, we could do it before October 5th.
Yeah, I mean, I
So-
think the week of the 14th of September would be the 3 weeks, but that means it's advertised right away, and I don't know when you advertise and how quickly you can do it, Marita, so.
Yeah, so we do it toward the end of the month.
What's the week after that?
21st,
21st?
that's a regular meeting.
That's a regular meeting. Can we do the 21st?
We could
Or
do
do you-
after the 21st.
Yeah. 28th?
Yeah, it's sooner.
It's,
I'd say 21st or 28th. It depends on what Lisa had
The
planned for us for the
21st, you have
We are
the
doing-
Sherenzia decision, and then the Hawkins Compassion Center
Yeah,
is
so
on.
let's,
for
Can
hearing.
we move it to the 28th?
yeah,
let's try for the 28th, I guess.
good. Okay.
You okay with that, Sharon?
Yes, the planning department's going to be doing their part on the first Wednesday in September, so we're fine.
Okay. All right, we'll try for that. Thank you. Next item under new business, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to approve a request to extend Maple Court and accept extension as town road requested by Tia Prayalo Esquire on behalf of Joseph Marone, Sarah Land Company, LLC.
Mr. President,
Yes, Scott.
Scott Bill Hurst, Vice President, Town Council. I will be submitting right now to
Talk
the,
into the mic, please, Scott.
be submitting to the Deputy Town Clerk, who's the Clerk of the Council this evening, a recusal form. I am an abutter to Mr. Marone's property, this property, and I live at 20 Maple Court, and so there's no question of my participation. I'm recusing myself. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Who wants to go first on this matter?
I just have a question. So they'll be taking the road up to town standards?
We can make that a part of our approval.
Yeah, I have no problem with them to approve that as long as it's up to town standards.
Yeah, and
We
there's,
got a report from Tim Teft, I believe, in the packet.
he was fine with it.
Yeah, he was.
But the planner had recommended that there's another bond, the bond needs to be extended.
Well, the maintenance bond of 17,500.
Oh, here it is, right here.
Right.
Yeah, the bond, the
Substitute.
roadway system conditional to the applicant establishing another maintenance bond covering the period from October 9th, 2020 through October 19th, 2021. So make that part of our motion. So what was it you said? Oh, the road, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's up to town standards?
in specifications. Yeah.
All right, I move that we accept the Maple Court extension into the roadway system, conditional to the applicant establishing another maintenance bond covering the period October 19, 2020 through October 20th, 2021, and that the road be
Adhere to
Adhere-
town
it-
specifications.
adhered to the town specs.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, Sharon?
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Any further discussion here at the council chambers? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And all those recusing? Scott. He's standing looking at me. You got to get in the mic. Okay.
Just for the record, Scott Billhurst, Vice President, I assume my seat.
Okay. All right. Next up, petition for an amendment to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance amendment. Opening hearing to consider an amendment to the Hopkinton comprehensive plan, future land use map, and the Hopkinton zoning ordinance filed by Centrica Business Solutions, 1484 Candlewood Road, Suite T through W, Hanover, Maryland, 21076, and Maitland Fothergill, 16 Woolen Drive, Cumberland, Rhode Island, 02864, for property located at 10-A Crandall Lane, number B, Ashaway, Rhode Island, 02804, identified as Plat 2, Lot 001, an RFR 80 zone. The July 6, 2020 hearing had been canceled upon receipt of a request for a postponement from the applicant's attorney, and the hearing was rescheduled to August 17, 2020. The applicants proposed to construct a 3.9 megawatt DC ground-mounted solar installation on 15.32 acres of property on Assessor's Plat 2, Lot 001. The proposal to utilize the property will require approval of the proposed comprehensive plan future land use map amendment from low-density residential to commercial, and a zoning classification amendment from RFR 80 to commercial. Documents related to this hearing have been posted on the town's website. I know first I've got to get all the participants unmuted, so just give me a few minutes to do that. First up, I think the abutters attorney, Peter, wanted to say a few words, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Surdut very briefly, and then Kevin McAllister, and then hopefully we'll begin our hearing. So just give me a minute here to unmute Peter. Hit *6 to unmute yourself, Peter. You're good. Peter, do you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
Mr.
hold on.
President,
Yeah, hold on 1 second, Pete. I just got to let in a few more, okay? Bear with me.
Sure.
Hello?
Hello?
Brian is on a conference call about solar.
Mr. Murray, hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, I have done so.
You there?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then let me get Mr. Surdut. Steve, hit *6 to unmute yourself. Steve Surdut? Steve Surdut, you there?
Frank, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, thank you. Okay, attorney, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Is it Skirts or
it's Squirts.
Squirts?
Can you speak up?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, please, you have a couple minutes before we begin the hearing. I know you wanted to mention something, so.
Thank you, Mr. President. If it's more appropriate, I could allow the applicant to present first and then present my expert in some argument after that. Or if you prefer, I can present up front. It's really up to you.
Well, yeah, typically it's the applicant first, but but Kevin, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, Peter, I think the council president's referring to the letter you sent us today, challenging whether the notice for the meeting was proper. That's all he's talking about. You may, perhaps before we begin, allowing Mr. Serta to respond. I'll wait. He wasn't referring to.
Excuse me, hello? Hello? Excuse me, this is the court reporter. I'm having a lot of trouble hearing, and there's a lot of background noise, so it's drowning the speaker out.
Is that the stenographer?
Yep, this is the court reporter.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the paper shuffling, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but it's
somebody's
drowning-
shuffling. If you're not speaking, put yourselves on mute. *6. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I'm going to begin again. Peter, what the council president was referring to, he's giving you an opportunity, if you want to briefly summarize your objection to us proceeding tonight on the basis of your contention that the notice was improper. He wasn't suggesting you put on your witness now or present your opposition to the case in chief. He was just giving you the opportunity to bring up the notice issue if you want, briefly.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll summarize the letter, and I'll try not to take up too much of your time. The issue with the notice that we noticed when we reviewed it at our office, and I'll start off. My name's Peter Squires. I'm with the law firm Urtillo, Kites & Rich. I'm here on behalf of Susan Haley, and also here on behalf of Robert and Judith Vredenberg. They own property at 37 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. And essentially our argument is, we have other arguments, but the notice argument is that the council can't act to approve this tonight based on a defect in the notice to the abutters, both in the newspaper and in the mailings that went out to the abutters. And there's 2 points to that. The first is the notice, while it mentions that that the hearing would be held remotely, there was no information provided in the notice about how someone reviewing or receiving the notice could access the remote hearing. So obviously I'm here because I knew that to go and look on the Secretary of State's website, and I got that information off the agenda. But someone that was unaware of the Secretary of State's posting or was less savvy about how public meetings are held, an abutter or an interested town resident might not know how to get remote access to the meeting. So I think that to approve this tonight, that would cause a problem. Of course, you have complete discretion to not approve it tonight, but if you were to approve it tonight, I think there's a notice defect. The second issue with the notice just goes to the fact that the plans changed a number of times in the notice period, both leading up to the planning board and leading up to this night's hearing. So there are a number of plans that have been out there. There have been 2 plans at 3.9 megawatts. There's been another plan submitted at 3.5 megawatts. And our argument on that point is that if there's going to be a change, it needs to be made based on discussion at a public hearing, and it needs to be presented for comment at the public hearing. So it's our position that it's not appropriate to make those changes leading up to a public hearing without actually doing it at the public hearing. And the problem is, especially with a Zoom meeting, where the people aren't physically in the building and can look at the plans, is that it leads to confusion. I know that I was at the planning board meeting, and there was a lot of confusion among the members of the public and among the board members themselves about which plan exactly was being reviewed. I'm afraid that defect was part of that, and it may lead to the same issue tonight. So just to summarize quickly, I think that those issues with the notice, they would prevent you from voting to approve the application tonight unless proper notice is given in the future. Of course, I would just add the caveat that it wouldn't prevent you from denying it tonight or not taking action to approve it tonight. So that's our argument. We have other arguments, but I'll wait later on in the evening to present that, and also to present our expert, Vin Murray, and we've submitted his planning report, basically just on policy grounds why this is a bad decision in his opinion, his expert opinion. So I'll leave the rest of that to the board to consider and for the applicant to respond. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Stephen Serda, do you want to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the board members for taking the time out of their schedule for this hearing tonight. Obviously, as the applicant, we would, and as I'm sure all members of the council would prefer that we do this in the traditional manner, all being in the same place at the same time with projectors and paper plans and the ability to all look at the same document at the same time. But unfortunately, that's not a reality that we can bring about. And in fact, as we had previously reached out to your town manager about the possibility of using videos during or having some sort of screen sharing option, but I believe that the technology in town and in town hall does not allow us to do that. As such, we have tried to do the best with the technology that we have. We are prepared to go forward tonight. And we are looking to have a full and complete hearing. We believe that we have the right to make changes to our plan up to the public hearing and during the course of that public hearing. We've tried to submit as much as early as possible to your clerk to get it posted to avoid any confusion and to give members of the council and interested parties an opportunity to review those documents in advance of the meeting, which is one of the benefits of one of the few benefits of this format. So with that being said, I defer to the council and to your solicitor with regards to the arguments made by Mr. Squires.
Thanks, Stephen. Kevin, you want to weigh in now?
Yes, thank you. This is Kevin McAllister, Hopkinton Town Solicitor. I disagree.
Kevin, having a tough time hearing you. Can you speak into your,
okay.
Maybe take it off speaker or something? It's very faint.
Yeah, is this better?
Not really.
Okay. Hang on. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is Kevin McAllister, Town Solicitor for Hopkinton. In my opinion, the notices, the newspaper notices, as well as the written notices to the abutters, fully comply with the notice requirements under state law and under the town charter. I'm specifically referring to Rhode Island General Laws 45-24-53. It also complies with the Open Meetings Act notice requirements. It also complies with the governor's current executive order, somewhat modifying the Open Meetings Act. There's no question in my mind that notice is proper and that the council is fully within its authority to go forward tonight. I just want to add as a postscript, the town charter actually prevents the town council from making a decision the same meeting where a public hearing is closed. So we're about to open the public hearing, and there's no way the the town council could legally vote on this tonight without violating the town charter. The town charter says any determination has to be made at a subsequent meeting of the council after the public hearing closed. So there's not going to be a vote on this tonight anyway. So hopefully that puts this issue to bed. I think we can proceed with the public hearing at this time.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Steve Surda, is there anyone else in your group that needs to be unmuted? I only unmuted you. Is there a Joelle out there?
They are out there. I don't believe any of them, with the exception of Joelle, if she would like to, has anything to add to this small portion. But I will be introducing each of our proposed witnesses at the time if the hearing is opened this evening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to open it up. I just, Marita, the deputy town clerk, the filing fee's been posted and fees paid and filing fees paid and notices posted?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Stephen, you've got the floor. I guess if there's anyone that needs to weigh in, just let me know what phone number, the last 4 digits, and I'll unmute them.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to make sure that we have that the public hearing is open. And with that being said, I'll move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board members know, we are here tonight regarding property located at 10A Crandall Lane, owned by the Fothergill family. Fothergill family has owned it for quite some period of time. And the Fothergill family, in combination with Centrica Business Solutions, has decided to present this application to the town council here. I will be introducing Ed Pimentel, our planner, who will go into in some detail why we are here in front of the town council this evening and how your comprehensive plan and ordinances in the town are structured in such a way as to promote this type of activity by and through the town council. Further to that effect, we have taken into great consideration the concerns that were voiced by the public, by abutters, and by the planning board, and additional members of the town council at the planning board meeting in our plans that are here before you tonight. We have a number of different exhibits which are posted on the town's website, and we have tried to reference those in regards to exhibits A through F, as well as a Centrica letter, a report by Mr. Ed Pimentel, and then our prior plan there as well, which we are labeling C1. The goal of all of these exhibits and constructions and all of this engineering is to show that we do meet the standards of your comprehensive plan, as well as have addressed the concerns of all of the members of the community, to the best of our ability, all of the members of the community, and to the planning board. We have, since the planning board meeting, taken extensive steps to meet with abutters, both directly and over the phone. There were in-person meetings offered on 2 separate occasions to all of the abutters, so that we could do our best to address all of the concerns. We have significantly reduced the size of our array, and I will allow our engineer, who has more expertise in the area, to go over the exact reductions and the percentages of those reductions. But the purposes of those reductions is to meet those concerns as addressed by members. We are going to present a number of witnesses here this evening. My first witness will be Jason Gold of ESS Engineering Group, who is our project engineer and has created a number of the exhibits that are going to be presented and submitted here tonight. We will also be presenting Ed Pimentel, who is a planner who has had an opportunity to testify before before the town, and I believe before the council, certainly before the zoning board and planning board previously on a number of occasions. We will also be presenting three experts from Centrica Engineering that will speak to the financial implications, the interconnection details, as these are quite complicated projects with a number of moving parts, including utilities, and then also who is Chaz Travasic. And then we also have Colleen Dabinato, who is a project expert and is our project manager for Centrica Engineering. We are aware, and we will do our best to be brief and to address directly the concerns that have been put forth, that there have been a number of these projects in front of the town, and that there is some fatigue with regards to solar in the town of Hopkinton. That being said, we do believe that this is a project that meets not only the regulatory requirements of your comprehensive plan and your ordinances, but also meets the spirit of what all of the councilors, as well as the abutters and general members of the community, have been addressing, which is that it will not be visible from a roadway, that it is tucked back in, that it is properly screened and abutted, and that it will not impact any particular person's property in great detail, and nor do we believe that it will reduce the value of anyone's property. So what I would like to do at this point in time is present Jason Gold, have him sworn in if the council believes it is appropriate, and allow him to begin addressing the exhibits that are in front of you.
All right, thanks, Steve. I guess before we have Jason testify, I just want to give folks a heads up. We're going to conclude at 10 p.m. regardless of whether we're finished or not. And I just want to let folks know that the public portion of this hearing may not occur tonight, given the fact that the opposing side has planning experts and attorneys involved. So I just want to get that out there. Kevin, do we need to swear in Mr. Gold? Although we've done it before, I'm not sure if it's required every meeting.
Yeah, I think we should swear in all the witnesses
Okay.
for this
All right.
hearing.
Marie, do you want to do the honors? Okay.
I would ask you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Can you hear me?
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jason Gold, G-O-L-D.
Okay, Jason, you have the floor.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My name
Jason, if I could very briefly,
Yes.
Jason, you presented a number of exhibits and applications before the board here tonight, correct?
Yes, I have.
And it is your belief that they fully, to the best of their ability on two dimensions, address the site and the site conditions, et cetera, correct?
Yes, correct.
But that being said, there's nothing quite like going actually out to the site and walking it yourself, correct? And you've been out to the site a couple times now, as recently as Friday, correct?
I was out there on Friday, yes.
Do you believe that a site visit is an important thing and really is important to understanding the full totality of this project?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, and that's something that, Mr. Chairman, that we're offering up to the board either as an entity as a whole, or if the board member or if council members would prefer to come out individually. As we move forward, we would encourage and in fact request that all the parties involved, all the council members at some point come and get out to the site. We believe that it is imperative to fully understand the topography and the unique conditions of this site, that each board member get an opportunity to come out there, and we'll be happy to facilitate that in whatever is the best manner. So with that being said, Jason, if you'd be so kind as to do our best to address the unique site conditions in the two dimensions that we have.
Yes, happy to. My name is Jason Gold. I'm a civil engineer with ESS Group. I think the way I'll do this, being an audio format. I'll give you a brief description of the existing conditions of the site, just to describe it. I'll give you a high-level overview of what we're proposing, and then I'll walk through some of the exhibits that we have submitted that are online. So it's a 46.6 acre property off of Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. Crandall Lane is a private road. It's located about 200 feet south of Main Street. The property is zoned RFR 80, and it's the surrounding area is residential. Currently, the property is primarily wooded. There are 2 single-family homes and a garage on the north end, right off Crandall Lane. The property is a hill. It slopes generally ranging from about 7 to 18% from low elevations near the property line of about 70 on the eastern side up to a high point of about elevation 127 at the peak. The eastern portion of the site is comprised of wetlands with an intermittent stream and the associated 50-foot perimeter wetland and 100-foot riverbank wetland. There's also utility easement that crosses the site in a north-south direction. The property is not located within any historic districts, state-designated scenic areas, unfragmented forest tracts, or state-designated greenway corridors. It is located within a groundwater primary protection zone, and it is not located within a natural heritage area. I do want to point out that the GIS layer for the natural heritage area was updated in August of 2019. So the original GIS plan that we submitted back in January of 2019 showed that the site was in a natural heritage area. That has since changed, and revised plans reflect that change. So it's no longer within that natural heritage area. So the proposed project is approximately 3.5 megawatt DC ground-mounted photovoltaic solar energy system with approximately 9,460 modules, plus an equipment pad and about 7 utility poles. Interconnection would be to an existing pole on Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. And access is from the existing Crandall Lane. That road would be improved. And multiple detention basins would be installed to capture, store, and slowly release stormwater. So I'd like to go through the exhibits just to make sure that everybody has them. They're posted on the town website. If you go to hopkintonri.org, and then click on the meetings menu, and then minutes and agendas. And there's a link for documents, Centrica Business Solutions / Maitland Fothergill Solar Hearing. And there are several documents listed there, and I will go through them, some briefly, some in a little more detail. The council members, please feel free to stop me if I'm moving on and you're still spending time looking at an exhibit or you're having trouble pulling it up. So Exhibit A is mostly just provided for reference. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. This is the original concept, the design that we submitted in January of 2019 when this project was starting. This was based entirely on GIS information. It is a 3.9 megawatt concept. Since then, we've had survey done, so we've been able to update that. So if you look at Exhibit B, it's called Planning Board Design July 2020 on the website link. This is a revised concept that we presented to the Planning Board on July 1st of 2020, last month. This is also a 3.9 megawatt concept, and it is revised based on survey, wetland flagging. We were out on the site, we flagged the wetlands, we got some survey. The GIS was no longer valid now that we have updated information. And so to present a more accurate concept. We revised the concept, and this is the plan that was submitted to the planning board. It's 3.9 megawatts. It's a 13.3 acre array with a 17.9 acre fence. The array is about 176 feet to the nearest abutter, and there's about 6 detention basins. I received a lot of feedback at that planning board meeting from both the planning board and the abutters. And so we improved this concept. And if you go to Exhibit C, titled Town Council Concept Design, August 2020 on the link. And this is an improved concept. Based on that feedback, we reduced the size, the output by 10% down to 3.5 megawatts. Reduced the array area by 30% down to 9.3 acres. Reduced the fence area by 20% down to 14.3 acres. This allowed us to increase distance to all the abutters within about 400 feet of the array. And it also allowed us to, it's conceptual, but most likely we'll be able to eliminate one of the detention basins. Now we're down to likely 5. Again, this is concept, they'll need to be designed, but pulling that up really should be able to eliminate one of those detention basins. So this plan here is the current improved, updated, most recent concept plan. Moving on to Exhibit D, it's titled Wood Buffer Plan on the link. This is the same concept as Exhibit C. It's just presented a little bit differently. It's a little bit easier to read for presentation purposes. Doesn't have quite as much detail, but this shows it overlaid on an aerial photograph. It's a little bit more colorful. What you're looking at here are the dark green, or existing woods to remain. There's a small strip of yellow just south of the array. Those are shade trees that would be cut but not grubbed. The existing ground cover would remain. So it's just the tall trees to eliminate shading on the array. And then the light green within the fence beneath the array, that final conditions would be grass. So that's area that would be grubbed, loamed, and then seeded. The array is further than about 475 feet from Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road, and it's generally more than about 300 feet from abutting residences, some quite a bit more. This project will be designed in accordance with the solar ordinance. All the distribution lines within the system will be underground. All the yard setbacks will be met. That's a 60-foot front setback, a 25-foot side setback, and a 50-foot rear setback. The array will be surrounded by a minimum 6-foot high chain link fence. It's actually a 7-foot chain link fence. And the gate will be locked with a Knox lock to provide emergency access. The bottom of the fence is also raised 6 inches above the ground to allow for a small wildlife passage. No exterior lighting is proposed, and the panel heights will not exceed 12 feet above final grade. And a vegetated buffer will be maintained within the yard setbacks. If we now move on to Exhibit E, titled Visual Simulation 2020-08-07. Now, we got a lot of feedback, as we normally do, about how these are going to look. And it's always hard looking at plans to visualize what it is that's actually going to be there. So we did this visual simulation to give an idea of what it would look like. And what we did is we took a photo. Obviously, we didn't have access to abutting property, so we took a photo from the site, looking into the site. you have a representative view of something similar to what an abutter may see. So what you're seeing on figure 1 of Exhibit E, this is an actual photograph that's merged with a representative 3D rendering. So the 3D rendering is based on the view angle, the existing topography, and distance from the viewer to the fence in the array. So this is showing, looking east, standing about 77 feet from the fence and 167 feet from the array, with 50 feet of woods between the viewer and the fence. That's a conservatively typical view from the eastern side of the property. Now, the thing with these visual simulations is, if you're looking at figure 1 at the photograph, you actually it's hard to actually see the fence in the array. If you look towards the center of the photo, where there's like a gap between some trees, you might be able to find it, but you have to look really hard. That's the outcome of these simulations. Is the guy doing the simulation puts in all this work, and then he ends up giving you something that you can't see anyway, which is kind of the point. But in order for you to see it, we also prepared figure 2. And this is the rendering, the same rendering, just without the photograph on top of it. So if you look at figure 2, and then you can flip back to figure 1, and that will help you see where that fence in the array is behind the trees. And so it shows that it's definitely not it's not an obtrusive thing. You know, it's in the back, it's in the woods, it's there. When I went out there on Friday, my goal is looking at this, thinking to myself, if I lived in one of these houses, would I personally have any objection to an array on the property like that? And standing there, you know, looking back towards the site, you know, this is pretty good. And I know I don't even think being in the yard, having a cookout, playing with the kids or whatever, this wouldn't even, I don't think you'd even really pay any attention to it. So work to be done. You know, what we're showing you now is a concept. So going forward, assuming this project goes forward, you know, the concept will be advanced to a design stage, permit level design. We would design the stormwater controls in accordance with the Rhode Island Stormwater Design Installation Standards rules and the Hopkinton Land Development and Subdivision Regulations. As I mentioned earlier, I anticipate probably about 5 detention basins surrounding the array to capture and slow the runoff before leaving the site. Our design plan review submittal to the planning board would include not only that permit level design, but also a noise study showing no increase in noise at the property line above allowed levels, decommissioning plan, stormwater report, and the soil erosion and sediment control plan. So that is all of the key exhibits and overview of the project. I'm happy to take any engineering specific questions if there are any.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Start out with Sharon, who's not in the council chambers. Sharon, any questions for Jason Gold?
I still would like to know, I have a problem with the fact that you have a proposed subdivision that's not gone through planning. I don't also think that even if you were going to plan to subdivide, that was not the way the comprehensive plan was written. I think it sets a bad precedent that you would have a property that was divided with residential and commercial. You also don't call it commercial special, so it sounds like once it becomes commercial, it would stay commercial, and anything could be put on that property.
Sharon, Jason's an engineer, the planner is next. That question may be better posed for Ed Pimentel.
Fine. Those are my questions.
Any engineering questions for Mr. Gould? Barbara?
Actually, I would agree with Sharon that he's the project engineer. So I also would agree that the 2 areas that you wish to subdivide as R1 should be addressed as soon as possible, so that those are simply taken out of the equation. I do think they seem to follow all of the zoning regulations, but it would be beneficial, I think, to accomplish it. I don't think it's a difficulty, but it certainly should be done. So I would agree with Sharon on that. I do have some questions. One, you did address the roadway, which is really quite poor. So my assumption is not only are you going to improve the road, but are you approving it to town standards because you're going to be using the large equipment at the beginning, and then of course later it will be small equipment. But are you planning on improving the road to town standards, this particular private road, so that the large equipment can be handled easily and without damage?
Yes, those are both good questions. Yeah, so regarding the subdivision, I want to thank you actually both for bringing that up, because I forgot to mention that the subdivision is part of the proposal, and Stephen Surdette and Ed Pimentel can address the legality and the purpose of that. But yes, the purpose, the intent would be to subdivide that off, and the reason is so that we don't have a mixed zone there, right? And so that would be. So as far as the order and how that all happens, I'm going to have to leave that to Steve, because that's his area of expertise. As far as the Crandall Lane improvements, I don't have the town standards in front of me, but I can say that the road would certainly be improved in a manner that can handle the construction traffic that's coming through. That would be the intent. The road now is definitely not in suitable condition for that.
Even the one with the green stuff.
Please, if you're not speaking, please mute your phone, *6.
Thank you. That answers one, insofar as I think you need to move forward on the rezone for the 2 housing lots. That should just be accomplished. The road certainly can be done in heavy stone for a large truck. I am much more interested in having that road improved to town standards for later use, not just the beginning use of the heavy equipment. I also had a question on the natural heritage, which we are no longer a part of as of August 2019. Do you know what it was referencing before it was updated and taken off the natural heritage area?
I do not. I was actually I do not is the short answer. I was about to inquire to get that information, and that's when I found that the area had actually been reduced.
Okay, because that might just be an interesting point to see if we've addressed the rare and endangered species. I
will just as a point of interest, just because natural heritage areas come up a lot on these projects. The natural heritage area boundary that is shown on the public GIS is in larger than the actual GIS area that the state has, because they don't want anybody knowing where the natural, where the resources are that are protected. And so the areas that you see are actually bigger, just to let you know that you're nearby. And then the state, when you submit your application, they do a more detailed study.
Oh,
so
okay.
lots of times, just because you're in a natural heritage area doesn't necessarily mean that there's something on your site.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. As far as the tree line with the fence, I can see it. It does make sense to me. However, it certainly isn't done in winter when it would be really quite open. So I am sure you would understand, as well as the abutters, that that would have to be become a more dense forested area in order to avoid the fence line and the solar during the winter months. So I'm sure you would understand you'd have to plant understory and thicker firs and pines to accomplish that. I'm assuming you're aware of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Stephen started here. Councilor Cababo, as Mr. Gold was saying, we certainly understand that. And if you have the right to make that a condition of any approvals, that you would make at any point in time.
Okay, so now my next issue is you're a project engineer, but I know you also have the interconnection person later.
Yes, Mr. Cababo.
Yeah, okay, so my concern is the equipment pad. Is there any way still to move that further into the array to get it even further from the two subdivided house lots? It's relatively close to those two lots, and I'd like to see it moved further into the array because it looks like you have space to do that.
Yes, yeah, this is a concept plan, so there might be some room to move around that equipment pad a little.
Thank you, because I'd like to, if you're going to have that equipment pad, I'd like it a lot further into the array as far as you can possibly get it and away from those two house lots. Otherwise, I have to say you have made a great deal of changes, and you have listened to both the council and the abutters, and not just abutters, but other people having comments. And I do think you've done a very good job in condensing it and making it more accessible for people that are used to being around a farm community. I do appreciate that. I have other questions for other people later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Scott, any questions for the engineer, Jason Gold?
Not really, but I will ask him, when you have any project, what negative effect do you think it could have on a budding property owners as far as runoff and things of that nature that would affect their property in a technical sense?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Jason,
catch
did you hear the question? Did you hear the question?
I didn't quite understand what the question was.
Okay, basically, I wasn't going to ask any question, but a lot of times when you have these proposals, people are concerned about the impact on their property, you know, technical sense of runoff and things of that nature. Do you think there is any legitimate concern in regard to any impact on abutting properties with this project?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Yes, so that is the whole purpose of the detention basin design. And so I can address that in a little more detail. So what we do on this site and every project is we model how much stormwater runoff would get to each property right now as under current conditions. And then we also model it again under proposed conditions where those woods are now grass, because that would result in an increase in runoff. And then what these detention basins do is they capture that runoff and they hold on to it, and they either infiltrate it or they let it out, but slowly and at the same rate or less as current conditions. So yes, we do very much consider that, and that's really the vast majority of my actual work once we get into the design phase.
Comment is perfect. We're subdividing it, but we're allowing that one to stay.
I'm sorry, this is the court reporter. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know who just spoke.
That was Jason
The court
Gold.
reporter?
Who's speaking?
Yeah, somebody else spoke and I didn't know who that was. After Mr. Gold.
Stephen said it. I did speak at one point here during Mr. Gold's presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve, going forward, if you interject, just state your name, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Sylvia, do you have any questions for Mr. Gold?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could circle back with Mr. Gold very briefly.
Sure.
Mr. Gold, as we discussed, one of the specific changes that has been raised here is that we do intend that Crandall Road, we are going to improve that. Could you briefly describe its current condition, and then what we are, to the best of your ability, what we are proposing going forward as a gravel road versus how it would appear today when you went there on Friday?
Oh yeah, right now it's partially broken asphalt, and then a gravel drive with a lot of potholes. It's pretty banged up. It's it's tough to drive down that road. We definitely wouldn't want to use a road like that for construction. So improvements, we haven't designed the improvements yet. It would most likely be a crushed stone road to remain pervious. RIDEM would want that to remain a pervious road, so it would be crushed stone. Usually it's 6 inches of washed crushed stone, and National Grid requires it to be 20 feet wide. So I don't know the current width of it, but if it's less than 20 feet, we would widen that to 20 feet and surface that with crushed stone.
And then one of the other changes we made was also reducing the distance, or reducing the number of rays at the northern end of the site, and that was based upon an abutter's request, correct?
Yes.
And then you have a significant amount of stormwater retention and basins on the site. Do you anticipate, how did you come up with that number, and how would those be further refined as we move forward through the process?
Well, we define the number based on the current flow patterns. And so those are, each basin is essentially a design point where existing water is flowing now. And I mentioned before that the detention basins are designed to reduce the rate to existing conditions, but we also don't want to change any drainage patterns. And so that's why there's that number of basins all next to each other.
So you believe that with your design that you won't impact groundwater flow, and you won't change the way that people's wells refill and recharge, or anything else to do with the aquifer that is accessed by abutters, as water and aquifer protection is an important part of Hopkinton's land use management.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, one of the state standards that we need to meet is groundwater recharge, and in order to get the Rhode Island DEM permit, insignificant alteration permit, we'll need to demonstrate that we're meeting those recharge requirements.
Thanks for Jason.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Gold. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Any further questions from Mr. Gold, counsel? Okay, thank you, Jason. Next up, I believe, is Ed Pimentel. Correct, Steve?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll have him sworn in by the deputy clerk, and then he can begin his presentation. Marita?
He's just having a couple of technical difficulties. He's going to have to call back in. His phone kicked him off. So if you could permit us about a minute here, Mr. Chairman, for that technical difficulty, I apologize.
What's Ed's phone number? The last four.
0657. And he should be calling back in here within about 15 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
What's the last four digits?
0657.
Okay.
It would be 0647, Mr. Chairman. 529 would be the first three. And I believe he just entered back into the meeting.
I'm trying to find.
Hello, can the town council hear me?
Is this Mr. Pimentel?
It is.
Okay, Ed, great. Speak clearly into your phone or wherever you're speaking. You're a little faint. But Marita, the Deputy Town Clerk, is going to swear you in, and then you can begin your presentation. Marita?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
That's Edward Pimentel. That's P as in Paul, I-M-E-N-T-E-L.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Pimentel. You have the floor.
You want to just me go? Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Hopkinton Town Council. I believe you have a copy of my report in your possession. I've been before this council. I've been before the planning board in this community now on several occasions with different solar projects. One thing I take very serious when I get involved in any land use is not only to review the requisite regulatory documents, but to really pay attention to what are the concerns of the regulatory officials, staff, the public. I've heard loud and clear on various projects. I know the town was inundated with solar projects. I know the town is experiencing solar fatigue. I understand that. So I don't want to just sit here and give lip service. When I was asked to get involved in this project, the first thing I did was let me take a look at it and see if it at least addresses upfront the concerns that I know that is shared by all equally. And that is, number one, the massing and scale of the solar facility in relationship to the property. Number two, what are the distances of the solar array area proper to the surrounding neighbors? Third, this always comes down to what's the degree of vegetative clearing. And the most important, we all know it, is the visuals. So I know that Counselor Attorney Surdit stated it previously, but I implore this council to conduct a site inspection and add that information to before you render any decision, because I'm telling this council that, as you well know, every project has to stand on its own merits. They're all unique. They all share different characteristics. I know that there's probably been some bad experiences with other projects. I've heard about it. It's anecdotal to me, but I've heard it. You really have to go to the property, and you really have to analyze and visually look at this property. And what I mean by that is it really is a multi-layered type situation. First of all, from Main Street, you're looking through a layer of properties in forested area before you hit Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. Then you get to that road. There's, again, a smattering of residences with the backyards well forested before you even hit the property proper. And now we've massaged that area, pushing the solar array back, giving great buffering to maintain even a greater number of forested trees. We did the same thing down in the Silverbilly area. Mr. Gold has already testified to all this. But the point was to pull this back all the way from all the different residences, concentrating in the area where it would have the least visual impact. And you really only come to understand this if you go to the property. Sit there, walk it, view it, go to the different, and I'm telling you, get a perspective that you just can't get from a two-dimensional plan. And the reason why I say this is because you're going to hear a lot of testimony on the characteristics and the consistency with comp plan and the ordinance, et cetera. But it really comes down to the uniqueness and the characteristics of the property as to whether a solar facility is proper or improper. And I state that because, as I've testified to in the past, we all know that the town of Hopkinton has an expectation that there's going to be some sites that are residentially zoned that are suitable. How do I know that? Because the vast majority of the property in town is zoned the RF 80, literally upwards of 80 and 90% of the property. There are, in fact, design standards in your zoning ordinance that address how a project is supposed to be introduced in a residential district. Why would those design standards be there if you weren't anticipate that there may be an appropriate site out there or appropriate sites? I believe this to be one of those. So in regards to the comprehensive plan, the town of Hopkinton literally has one of the newer plans. It was approved just as recently as 2018. And you did address alternative energy as required by state law through their state guide plan requirements. And you note that you want to accommodate renewable energy. You've done that by right in the limited scarce commercial and industrial sites, but clearly it can't be the intent that solar is to consume or exhaust all of those sites, because you also need to balance the fiscal component of this, and that's to balance a very heavy laden residential tax base and offset it with a commercial and an industrial base. So it can't be to consume by solar. So that's, once again, another reason why I believe that there's going to be residential sites that are appropriately for solar, and that the comprehensive plan supports that. And to further acknowledge that, there's actually language right on point in your comprehensive plan that states, and I'm here working my report here, that states, and I quote, this is what your comprehensive plan directs the community to do, and that is to consider expanding the current zoning regulations to allow, not even by special use, but to allow as a matter of right, photovoltaic installations in residential districts. Now, we haven't even gotten to that point. And I think the reason being is that the council realizes that there is going to be a number of these projects coming forward, and the better way to control it is through individually bringing it before the council, deciding if the site is appropriate before you change the zone, and then it proceeds on to the development plan review for the planning board for the actual designing of the project. So really what we're at right now is we're at a conceptual vesting stage. This would be no different than if this was a land development and we were seeking master plan. No one is going to make the heavy investment in a development until they have at least acquired some kind of conceptual approval. That's how the state law has been laid out under the new enabling legislation of the early 1990s. And that's basically where we're at. We're at a zone change. We're at a conceptual stage. Is this site, not just in general residential, but is this site appropriate? And if so, we attain the zone change subject to a number of conditions of approval, and one of them being the development plan review, where you do the heavy lifting, you do the engineering, you do the landscaping, and you make sure it does not impact the character of the area, it does not impact the neighbors, and that's basically where we are. Now, I know there were some questions already asked, so let me just quickly address those before I open up to any other questions. Regarding the subdivision, it is definitely not our intent to realize some nonconformity with these residences and put them in commercial.
Hey, Ed, I'm having trouble really hearing you. Sometimes it's clear, other times it's very faint. So
can you hear me better right now?
Yeah, just if you can stay on point there with whatever you're speaking into. You're probably drifting to read documents or whatever. Hold them up to you. Yeah, just if you can. It's just very hard to hear.
I'll keep the phone right on my mouth. So there was a question about the subdivision. So in regards to that, it is not our intent to render these residences non-conforming by putting them in a commercial district or designation, correct? So what we believe the best way to proceed.
I don't get it. I don't understand what the problem is.
Please mute your phone if you're not speaking. *6. Thank you.
Mr. President, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead, Ed.
Okay. So the intent is to clearly maintain these residences in a residential designation, and to also provide it the requisite lot area in order to comply with the zoning ordinance, which is the 2-acre minimum per dwelling unit density. So, and my report reflects that too, but it's to cut out the 4 acres. But how I think best to do this is that, seen as this, once again, we're treating this like a conceptual approval or first stage of approval, is that the zone change would be conditioned on achieving all the other approvals. So one of those would be, at the end, is effectuating a 2-lot subdivision. And if that occurs, then really only the remaining acreage allocated to the solar project would then take on the commercial designation, and the 4 acres would retain the residential. And that would be the best way of doing this and meeting the letter of the law and protecting that property from becoming non-conforming. And of course, protecting the public from any concerns that there may be future solar encroachment onto that lot because it's attained a commercial designation. So that's to address that question. I don't know if the council has any additional questions.
All right, Ed, we'll open it up for the council. Questions for you. Sharon, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sharon, why did you say commercial instead of commercial special, so that it only refers to solar?
Well, I just used the term commercial and the generic. I meant a commercial special.
Well, it's not what you have on your paperwork, so that's why I'm asking the question.
No, yeah, well, I meant that we want to rezone it just to the district that would only allow the solar and not allow any other use. And we would accept that as a condition of approval regardless that it's restricted solely to the solar.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Scott, you have a question for Ed
You want me to ask you
Pimentel? Speak into the microphone, please.
Do you want me to go into the modifications? Do you want to get into the modifications that we did? Because Jason had already testified to that.
Vice President, Town
You want me?
Scott, hold on. Folks, you're talking over the council vice president. He's asking a question for Ed Pimentel. No sidebar conversations, please. Thank you.
Scott Billhurst, Vice President, Town Council. Mr. Pimentel, the bottom line is, I see it as a member of the Town Council, the planning board does not support this project, and they are the principal advisors of the Town Council on land use. Not that they're King Solomon, but certainly their views are important. And also, it's come before the council on the other side that they have a rebuttal to many of these things. The question is, do you believe the production of electricity, is that a manufacturing use from your perspective? And also, do you believe the planning board, certainly probably more than anybody, with the exception maybe of the council, basically deals with the comprehensive plan and maintaining it, and certainly advising when they believe changes are needed. And yet we have the planning board currently did not approve this project, or is not recommending it to the town council. How do you address or respond to that?
Sure, thank you. Here's the problem, and we're in a very difficult dilemma in that if this were a situation where we'd have the project vested, then we could start doing the hard engineering and designing to address the concerns of the planning board, which their concerns are, A, what is going to be the degree of clearing? What are going to be the ultimate visuals? What is going to be the end result of the buffering and the distancing from property boundaries? We can only give those in a conceptual format now, even though there will be strict compliance with the plan that's been provided to the council. But the point is, we can't get to addressing their concerns until we've attained the zone change. So it's like it's the old chicken and the egg situation now. The planning board has all these concerns. We wish we could address them, but no one's going to do the heavy lifting and engineering until we've attained the zone change. That's the way the law is written. If this were a land development, right now this would be a master plan stage we're in. We wouldn't be doing the preliminary on the engineering. But this is how the council has laid out the process for solar facilities. Unless you acquire one of those few sites where it's by right, and then you're going through the development plan review, and I'm doing one right now on Frontier Road, and we're going through that and addressing all of the DPR standards. You can't get there until you attain the zone change. So I don't know how we can satisfy the planning board until we've satisfied the council, in other words.
My other question for you, and my last question, is that some critics of the proposal might suggest this is an example of spot zoning. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
No, because I think there's a lot of urban myth with spot zoning. So the Supreme Court has already ruled on what's deemed valid and invalid spot zoning. So spot zoning on its very face is not prohibited. And an example of that, and it's one that happens quite frequently, is people acquiring open space to protect in perpetuity. So a piece of land comes along, it's part of a game plan, or some green game plan that the comprehensive plan acknowledges they want to acquire, and it may be the first piece in, and they rezone it to an open space or some kind of protected overlay classification. Is that spot zoning? No. Why? Because it's consistent with the goals and objectives in your comp plan. As I stated, the comprehensive plan, in my special opinion, anticipates that they're going to come individual sites throughout the community that would otherwise be appropriate for solar. But how do we do this? We do it by rezoning it to the commercial. Clearly, you can't pursue a use variance. You can never meet the burdens. So this is the only other viable way of rendering an appropriate site for solar, and that is to rezone it. And you're not going to start rezoning the surrounding properties in order to avoid spot zone, because now you're just opening yourself up to a Pandora's box and a proliferation. That's not the objective either. It's finding individual appropriate properties and proceeding through this process. That is the manner that the town of Hopkinton has established the regulatory process for solar facilities.
I thank you for your response.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Barbara, you have
Yeah.
any questions for Ed?
I actually don't have any questions. I read your report in full. I thought it was extremely well written, and it did address most of Hopkinton's concerns across the board. I do appreciate it. I think it's certainly, we have seen you before, and I think this is a much better report than the earlier ones. I thank you for that. I did appreciate it. I think that you were very clear, and you're very clear about our comprehensive plan and the need for renewable energy, and how the state, as well as the 2035 state energy report, as well as state planning, as well as the town of Hopkinton's comprehensive plan, all work together to try to accomplish renewable energy within the state and getting away from fossil fuels. Certainly Hopkinton, because we are 90% R1 or RFR 80, we have an enormously tiny amount of commercial property, and that commercial property is primarily used. It is accomplished already. That in order for us to get a commercial tax base, which is one of my major concerns, especially since everyone now has their tax bills in front of them, and this is the tip of the iceberg, we need to address, our comp plan has to address a commercial base for the taxpayers in Hopkinton so we can keep their homes. It has to begin somewhere, and it has to begin in small ways. This is one of the most innocuous uses of commercial that we have, and I believe that thoroughly. So I appreciate your work, I appreciate your report, and I am hoping that others will take the time to read it in full, thoroughly, because I think it lays it out very well, and I appreciate it. And I really appreciate it since you've been here for a while and you've really seen our concerns and they have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Sylvia, any questions for Mr. Pimentel?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, Ed, I think that's it for the council, I believe. Thank you. Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Surdut, I guess you have folks from Centrica?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At this point in time, I would like to have Mr. Doug Tletman sworn in, who's going to be our first representative from Centrica, and then we'll field some questions, as I know Ms. Capavo's going to have questions, as well as other members of the council.
Okay, thank you. Marita, would you please swear in Doug, please?
You solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Douglas Tletman, T-E-L-E-P-M-A-N.
Okay, Doug, you've got the floor.
Mr. Tletman, Stephen Surdut.
Hi, Steve.
You've had the opportunity to present, you drafted a letter that's been presented to the board, correct?
Yes.
If you would be so kind as to go through that letter in detail and then address what you believe the financial benefit to the town would be, as well as is my understanding, or our understanding is how this project came to be, and how Centrica came into a partnership with the Fothergill family.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, Steve. Thank you. So first of all, on behalf of Centrica, I too as well would like to thank the council for taking their time for this hearing this evening. And I very much look forward to the opportunity when I can see all of your smiling faces in person again. Centrica was approached, I was personally approached by Mr. John Fothergill some time ago, who had attended a planning board meeting where Centrica was presenting a project.
And he pulled me aside after the meeting and said that he, was very interested in using his property for a solar development, and would I be able to help him in that regard. So I worked with Mr. Fothergill over a period of several months, speaking to him about it and evaluating the property. He disclosed to me during that time that, his health was not very good, and that, this was kind of the legacy that he wanted to leave for his family. And as it happened, as we were developing the project, Mr. Fothergill passed away, unfortunately. And shortly after Mr. Fothergill passed away, one of his children, John Fothergill Jr., passed away. And I ended up, communicating primarily with Mrs. Fothergill, who was Maitland Fothergill, as well as one of the children, William Fothergill, about this project. And they continued to express to me that they were very interested in being able to move forward with this project, and that it would be extraordinarily meaningful to them as it relates to their ability to remain owners of the property, which they have owned, for quite a long time. So just to, clarify, as I've stated to the council before, Centrica has never solicited anybody for solar in the town of Hopkinton or anywhere else in the state of Rhode Island. We've never sent out direct mail pieces. We've never knocked on any doors. Every project that we're working on, either in Hopkinton or somewhere else in Rhode Island, is happening because either a property owner heard about us and solicited us, or was referred to us by another Hopkinton resident or Rhode Island resident who was happy with the work that we did for them and came to us that way. So before I speak about the potential financial benefits of the project to the town, I did just want to directly answer one of the questions that was previously asked of Ed, which is, do we consider solar to be manufacturing? And I would state that our position is unequivocally no, it is not manufacturing. Typically, by definition, although I'm sure there will be people who will disagree with me, to manufacture something, you need to use a machine. And machines typically have moving parts. And neither the solar panels nor the inverters that are used to create energy from this facility have any moving parts. So I would say that the conversion of light into electricity is no more manufacturing than the process of photosynthesis, which no one would ever dream of calling manufacturing. But it involves almost the exact same physical acts. So moving on to the financial benefits of the system, as far as it relates to tangible personal property tax, the system owner will pay 5,000 megawatts per year. $5,000 per megawatt AC per year. This project is 3 megawatts AC. And that adds up to $15,000 per year. The term of the Fothergill's lease, the base term of the lease, is 20 years. So you're talking about a minimum of $300,000 over the course of the lease of the Fothergill property, and that rate would continue to be paid for as long as the solar facility remains installed at the site. In addition to the tangible personal property tax, Centrica would offer the town of Hopkinton the offtake of the energy generated from this facility in such a manner as to save the town approximately $6 million in electricity costs over the term of the lease of the Fothergill property, which would be 20 years? And should that lease be extended, or should the system remain in service past the 20 years? Those savings would reach approximately $8 million over a 25-year period. So the average annual savings therefore to the town would be somewhere between $300,000 and $320,000 per year. So when you assess the cumulative impact of the taxes, which by the way, manufacturing equipment is tax exempt in the state of Rhode Island. So I would say that our position that this is not a manufacturing facility would be consistent with the towns because I assume that they want to collect these tangible personal property taxes. When you take the cumulative effect of the tangible personal property tax and the electricity cost savings from remote net metering, you're looking at somewhere between $6.3 million to $6.3 million to $8.3 million in net financial benefit to the town over a period of 20 or 25 years. And that amount includes only the specific items that I've mentioned, does not include the real property taxes assessed against the property or permitting fees or any other fees associated with the project. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Doug, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly, before the council, Stephen Surdick.
Yes.
Doug, you mentioned that you're willing to offer the offtake from this facility back to the town. To us lay folks who don't work in electricity, can you give us a little bit more of an explanation, a way we can tangibly understand that so that these don't just feel like numbers floating on a paper?
Sure.
Hold on.
Yeah. Mr. Surdick, I need you to repeat that question, please.
I apologize, Ms. Steno.
Hey, Steve, if it's okay with the council, I'll just repeat the question to the best of my ability. Please stop me, Steve, if I'm not repeating it correctly, and then I'll go ahead and answer it. So the question is, I mentioned in my testimony that Centrica would be willing to offer the energy generated by the system to the town in such a manner that the town would save somewhere between $6 and $8 million over the next 20 to 25 years on its electricity costs. Steve asked if I could, clarify that a little bit for those that, this might not make sense, what the mechanics or logistics of it would be, how that would occur, how would these savings manifest themselves. And I'm happy to provide that clarification. Although it might get a little complicated, and I apologize for that, but under this system of remote net metering, which is in place in the state of Rhode Island by statute, municipal entities, other public entities, nonprofits, hospitals, educational institutions have the opportunity to purchase what are called net metering credits from qualified renewable energy facilities. And a net metering credit is essentially a gift card that can be used to pay your electric bill. So let's say, for instance, $10,000. So this solar facility installed at the Fothergill property generates $10,000 worth of these credits. Those credits can be assigned to the town of Hopkinton to use in any of their facilities on any of their electricity accounts. And that would offset $10,000 worth of cost on that particular electric bill. So say, for instance, the electric bill that month was $10,000 exactly. The credits from the Fothergill facility would reduce that bill to zero. The savings occur based upon at what cost the town would purchase those credits for. And in the example that I used the approximate average discount rate that exists throughout the state of Rhode Island currently, which is 30%. So those $10,000 worth of credits you would purchase under this scenario for $7,000. And therefore you would convert that $10,000 electricity bill into a $7,000 electricity bill with no expense necessary, no investment necessary to do that. And when you take the amount of electricity the system will generate and therefore the amount of credits it would generate over a 20 or 25-year period and apply that 30% discount over that period of time, the cumulative savings will equal approximately $6 million over 20 years, approximately $8 million over 25 years. Steve, does that clarify the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Doug. I just had to unmute my phone there. So that was my delay.
Oh, no worries. Again, at this point, if any members of the town council have any questions about any of this, or anything that you might think I'd be helpful in answering, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I'll start again with Sharon, who's not at the council chamber. Sharon, any questions for Doug?
Yeah, so he's saying that $6 million is $300,000 a year over 20 years, and that $300,000 is 30%, represents the 30% discount. So we would have to have $1 million in electrical costs to realize $300,000. Am I right so far?
You're close.
Well, the point is, I don't know that the town has $1 million worth of electrical bills a year.
I don't know either. My general point is this is the potential for the town. And if the town,
Sharon, let him finish his explanation.
Okay.
So the way I came up with this number is based exclusively, Councilor Davis, on the amount of electricity that the system will generate. I have not had the opportunity to analyze the town's electric bills. So I don't know if the town consumes 4.8 million kilowatt hours of electricity per year. If it did, and if it could use all of these credits, then that's what the cumulative savings would be. If the town is interested in knowing precisely what the benefit would be, I would be happy to analyze your electric bills and give you an exact number custom tailored to your specific usage.
Well, I just think it's a bit much to put that number out there when it's not based on facts. But thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome. And to reiterate for you, Councilor Davis, we are absolutely seeking a zone change to commercial special. And I will tell you that neither Centrica nor the Fothergills have any desire whatsoever to do anything other with this property than use it for solar, either now or any time in the future. And we'd be willing to stipulate to that as a condition of any approval.
And Mr. Tillotman, Stephen Sturdit, it's your understanding as well that this is a lease with the Fothergill family, and at the conclusion of the lease that it will revert back to them and they can use it for agricultural purposes as they could have prior to this application, and that based upon our bonds and other documents that we have to put in place, that it will be decommissioned in such a way that it will not impact the ability to use it for agriculture after its useful life is extinguished or used up.
Yes, I think you asked a few questions there, Steve. I'll do my best to answer them. So yes, this is absolutely a lease to which the Fothergill family would be the lessor. And at the end of the lease, the property would remain under the ownership of the Fothergill family. The decommissioning of the facility would involve removing all above ground equipment as well as all below ground equipment and restoring the property to the extent possible back to the condition in which it was prior to the installation, so it could absolutely be used for agricultural purposes in the future.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Capalbo has some questions for Doug.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I do appreciate the energy credit, and if you could work that out, that would be very nice. I would appreciate that. Thank you. On the
I'm sorry if I can interrupt for 1 second. Who would you recommend I contact to get copies of all of the town's electric bills?
our finance department, and you can also talk to Bill McGarry. I'm sure he can tell you where to go, so to speak.
Thank you.
So to speak, so to speak.
It won't be the first time.
Yeah, it will be fine. Thank you. So that's one thing, because I think that would be appreciated, and I'd like to see those numbers. The other was on the tangible tax, which is $5,000 per megawatt.
AC.
Right, exactly, except that you have 3.5 megawatts on the new plan. So that would be, instead of 15,000 a year, that would be 17.5. So you might want to upgrade those numbers.
Councilor Capalbo, if I can just clarify something for you. The 3.5 megawatts is DC, and the tangible tax is based upon AC. So the system on an AC basis is 3.0 megawatts.
Okay, so I'll give you the 0.5. But so the other question is the property tax. Since you're going to be leasing this area that is made commercial special now changes its property tax exclusively to the solar array. But that is a substantial amount of money. And I would like you to figure out what that is and give us our tangible property tax change from RFR 80 to commercial special for solar. The rest of the property is swamp and most likely will never be used for anything unless we can fill in swamps, which I doubt DEM will do. However, I do want you to remember that once this array finishes, if it finishes in 25 years or 50 years, it doesn't have to go back to farmland. It can be housing as well as farmland. It certainly is commercial special, and we're making it so that it's only solar, but indeed it can go back to becoming a housing property or farmland. The rest of the property will probably remain as RFR 80 since much of it is swamp and won't be developed. So I would like it if you could redo the financial information. I appreciate the 3 megawatts for the tangible. I'd like you to let us know what the energy consumption would be, because it would be very nice just to pay what we do have and finish with it, because we don't have a lot. Sharon is correct about that. But whatever that is, I would like not to have to pay it. And then I would like to know what the property tax shift will be, because that's where the substantial money is. That's where you go from, 1,000 or a couple thousand an acre
To 45.
to 45,000 an acre. And I intend to get every penny of that for 9 acres of solar. So I would really like to know that number. That one's far more important because that's every year. That's not over 25 years. That's every single year. And that's substantial. And that's the number we need to hear from you. And I do appreciate the rest of the work you've been doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You got that, all that, Doug? This is Council President Frank.
Yeah, I do have that. I'm not exactly certain, if I have the knowledge base necessary to calculate, Hopkinton property taxes. But I'll consult with Stephen and we'll come up with something for you.
Right, and talk to our tax assessor. She can give you real information.
Great.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Sylvia Thompson.
This is Sylvia. Bill McGarry, our town manager, I would just ask you to ask the tax assessor, as she's done on every proposal, just to ask us what the difference is, because it would be, if this got approved, it would become commercial, it would be to assess more and the taxes would increase. And she always looks at that based upon the proposal, and she comes up with an estimate. So that's what we need, not from the applicant. We need it from the tax assessor. Thank you.
Acceptable.
Yep, yep.
Gary, town manager. I'd be more than glad to make that referral to Liz Monty, also to Finance Director Brian Rosso to get those numbers.
Save you a step, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay. Sylvia, do you have anything else for Doug? Okay. All right. Thank you, Doug. I don't have anything. Scott, do you have anything for Doug? I can't remember if you asked anything.
I have nothing other than to say that I think people in the town want us to make decisions, not strictly based on tax.
I'm sorry, I can't, the court reporter can't hear Mr. Hurst.
Scott, you got to speak into the mic. Speak into the mic.
Okay.
Turn it.
Scott Bill Hurst. I just reiterate, interest in all the testimony from the public, which hasn't been done, the experts on the other side, but I think everybody in this town, or a lot of people in this town, want us to make decisions, not strictly on the tax revenue, but the quality of life in town. I'm interested in all the testimony and we'll see what happens, but the quality of life in Hopkinton, even though the tax revenue is very attractive, has to be considered and weighed. Thank you.
So if I may respond briefly to that, thank you very much for that comment. I would just say that it's our position and the position of the applicant that as a result of the fact that a solar facility poses no danger to the community.
We're using the
Please mute your
Steve,
phone.
can you mute, please?
Stephen Surda, mute your phone.
We should be out of here by about 9:40.
Stephen Surda, you got to mute your phone. You're talking over the, it's very difficult to hear.
Sorry about that. So based upon the fact that the solar facility poses no danger to anyone in the community, we've made our assertion, and we certainly encourage the council to go out and corroborate our assertion that you can't see the solar panels from neighboring properties or from the street, that this system would not negatively impact anybody's quality of life. You know, it doesn't make any noise. No one's going to hear it. No one's going to ever even know it's there. So, you know, you will get the positive financial impact, and it's our position that it would not, you know, negatively impact anyone's quality of life. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I think, yeah, Stephen, I think we're all set with Doug. Your next witness.
Our further witnesses from Central are technical and related to interconnection.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Mr.
Stephen, your phone is not, we can't hear it.
Can you hear me better now, Mr. Chairman?
It's
No.
very faint.
I don't, no.
Can't understand.
Can you hear me at all right now?
That's better.
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. At this point in time, we would reserve all rights, including the right to conclude and the right to come back and answer those questions that have been posed to us by council members, and look forward to the opportunity to hear from members of the community as well as opposing counsel and their views.
Stephen, Barbara, Council Capalbo has a question about the interconnection. Is Chaz able to speak to that, or Colleen? You mentioned their names earlier.
Yes, if there are specific questions regarding interconnection, Chaz is on standby to address those, and he is available to speak. I believe his phone number ends in 5726.
5726, okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, star six, Chaz, to unmute. Chaz? Star six to unmute you. Chaz, there you go. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Speak clearly into the phone. Councilor Capalbo has a question regarding interconnection.
Thank you. We have the new solar array, and I've already talked about the fact that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We've already talked about the fact that the transformer, the equipment pad with the transformer is really close, and I'd like to see it further into the array. I assume you were here from the beginning of this meeting. My other question is on the inverters. Are those in line, or are you going to be padding them throughout this particular array?
We would concentrate the transformer and the equipment pad and all the inverters as close to the center of the array as possible to ease your concerns.
As close to where?
The center of the array. We would. I would have them redesign it.
That would be appropriate. It really needs to be much further away from the people. Any of the inverters and the transformers, so that if that can be, obviously you're going to do the connection for National Grid up by the gate, but I would like to see the transformers and the inverters much further into the array, much farther from any residents.
Absolutely, that shouldn't be a problem. We can redesign that quite easily.
Yeah, I would think so too, because the further you can get, the better it is for everyone. Thank you very much. That is the primary.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Stephen, I believe, do you have any further comments, or we're going to turn it over to Peter. Peter, I don't want to mess up his last name, Skirts or Skirts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As I said before, we just reserve the right to respond, conclude, and address any specific points, and to come back before the council with those specific requests that have been made to us tonight, specifically including the financial requests.
Okay, sounds good. Peter, are you out there?
Mr. President, can you hear me?
We can. Speak right into the mic, please. It was a little faint towards the end of your greeting.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Peter Squires. I'm an attorney with the law firm Arcillo Tights and Rich in Providence. I'm representing Susan Haley and Robert and Judith Bredenberg. They own property at 37 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. I'd like to make a couple of legal arguments to start out with, but I won't take long because with me tonight is Vin Murray. He's a planning expert with over 40 years of planning experience. He was with the town of South Kingstown for the last 20 years of his career, and he served as the planning director in South Kingstown, after which he retired. But he has an expert planning report that he submitted to the council. So I'm going to let him do the majority of the testimony, and I'd ask that he be accepted as an expert. But before we begin, I'd like just to hit on a couple of preliminary legal points. I've already raised the notice issue, and I've sent the letter to your solicitor, so I won't belabor the point on that. I think that's been prepared for the record. But there's two other points that I'd like to make before I ask Mr. Murray to be recognized. The first is, what do you make of the fact that the town planning board
Peter, hold on. Peter, hold on. We get a lot of background noise. I'm having trouble hearing Peter. If you're not speaking, put your phone on mute, *6. Thank you. Peter, continue, please.
Thank you. The first question is, what do you make of the fact that the planning board unanimously voted not to proceed with this comprehensive plan amendment and gave a negative advisory on the zoning amendment, which would accompany that? From my position is that because the planning board did not vote to approve this and send it forward to the council, that it's not appropriate for the council to adopt it at this point. And I know that there has been a previous Superior Court decision that looked at your supermajority ordinance, but in my opinion, that decision didn't answer the predicate question, which is set out by state statute, and it's Title 45, Chapter 22.2, Section 8. That's the Comp Planning Act. And subsection A1 provides, and I'll quote it here, quote, "A planning board or commission has the sole responsibility for performing all acts necessary to prepare a comprehensive plan for a municipality." Now, the point of that, there was some mention of spot zoning by Mr. Pimentel, and the point of this act is to address the issue of spot zoning. Prior to this enactment of this statute, spot zoning was treating a parcel differently than the others surrounding it in a manner that was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan as determined by a court. After that statute was enacted, it gave comprehensive planning over to the planning board in the first instance. And the purpose of a comprehensive plan is exactly what it sounds like it should be, which is to provide a comprehensive overarching goal for the entire town. And then the zoning ordinance amendment, when there's individual applications asking for an amendment, you have to compare the amendment to the comprehensive plan that was prepared by the planning board. Well, if the council could on a case-by-case basis amend the comprehensive plan to fit the applicant's zoning ordinance amendment, at that point you don't have a comprehensive plan anymore. You basically have a legitimized spot zoning mechanism. So in my opinion, because this comp plan amendment was not prepared by the planning board, and in fact they voted not to recommend it to the council, that it's not appropriate for the council to enact this amendment. The second point that I'd like to make, a predicate legal point, is there was some discussion about whether this application was vested for the purposes of being considered under a photovoltaic solar energy system ordinance that was adopted in 2016, or whether you should consider it under the ordinance that was adopted in 2019. And the import of that is that if you consider it under the ordinance that was adopted in 2019, this application does not come close to complying with the guidelines set forth in that 2019 ordinance. So the question is, do they have a vested right to be considered under the prior ordinance? And the case law on that point is clear. They do not. They have no vested right to be considered under, they have no vested right at all to be considered for a comp permit amendment and a zoning ordinance amendment. And the case law indicates that you could choose not to act on this, and they would have no right of appeal, and they would have no right to challenge the failure to enact the amendment because it's purely a legislative act by the council. And cases I would cite on point are PJC Realty versus Barry, Roby Associates versus Ferranti, and Consolidated Realty Corp versus Tiverton. And the point of all those cases is to say, if you choose not to enact an ordinance amendment, the applicant that asked for that amendment has no right to challenge it. And the reason that's important is because vesting occurs when an application has been filed and then subsequently there's a change in an ordinance. That application for development has the right to be considered under the prior ordinance. if it qualified under the prior ordinance. The difference here is that this application did not and could not qualify. It was not legally permitted under the ordinance in effect when they submitted their request for a zone change and a comp plan amendment. And in fact, that was the whole reason they requested a zone change and a comp permit amendment. When they filed their application, they did not qualify as of right to get consideration or to get approval. So there is no vesting in this case. Now, that ties into another issue, which is the precedent of approval statute. And under 452361 of the general laws, the first step when a particular project requires a zone change or a comp plan amendment is to first go to the planning board on the first stage of review, which in this case is development plan review. And then after that, they can come to the council for their zone change or comp permit amendment. They haven't done that. They have not submitted an application for development plan review as the first step. And because of that, they can make no argument that there's vesting in this case. And there was also discussion of, can you restrict this to only one use? And there was discussion of the commercial special use. Well, I would just note that another application, which I'm familiar with, since I represent an abutter on that application, for a solar project, is proposed for Plat 11, Lot 47A in town. And that has a commercial special use that was enacted back in 1990 for a hotel use and a golf course. But with the passage of time, now, since that original project was not developed, now an applicant is coming in asking for a different use, asking for a solar project, and the opinion of the town was the commercial special designation did not restrict that project to the use originally contemplated. So I question, if you were to give this a commercial special designation, whether or not that would truly pertain to restricting this to a solar use. The final issue I'd like to address was raised by your solicitor as we discussed the initial notice issues. He referred to section 3211 of your charter, which refers to the ordinary ordinance process where after a public hearing, you cannot take any, it says no action shall be taken on an ordinance until the next regular or special town council meeting. So I would submit that you cannot approve this at this meeting tonight. But if you do not pass the amendment, if you choose not to enact this proposed zoning ordinance amendment and comp plan amendment, that you are not in fact taking any action at all. You're choosing not to act. And if you choose not to act, you don't require another hearing. You can simply choose not to act to enact this proposed amendment at this hearing tonight without any further continuance, and there is no further consideration that can be given to that decision not to act in a court or in any other forum. So with those predicate issues addressed, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I'd like to introduce Mr. Murray to present his testimony at this time.
Okay, Peter, thank you. Mr. Murray has the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Murray, the deputy town clerk will swear you in now.
Okay, very well.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Vincent Murray. I'm a resident of South Kingstown.
Okay, Mr. Murray, you have the floor, sir.
Okay. As Mr. Squirtz made note of, my role as a professional planning and land use consultant is to provide a review and analysis of this application for a comp plan amendment, which is a change to the future land use map, or FLUM, which is map 13 in your plan, and proposed zoning map amendment from RFR 80 to commercial
I've heard discussion tonight of the commercial limited, but the application filed back in January of the prior, of 19, I guess it was, just makes note of commercial in the text. And this is to facilitate the installation of a 3.9 megawatt DC TSES on the premises, and that's, I guess, under use code 486 and I submitted a technical memorandum that was dated August 10th, 2020, which I would reference for the public hearing record. You know, the testimony I'm going to give will be a summary, a briefer summary of the 13-page memorandum I prepared. And I also would make note that my resume had been forwarded to the town solicitor in preparation for the meeting, documenting my, I would say, 36 years of experience as a professional land use planner, not 40 plus. I'm a senior citizen, but I haven't reached the 44-decade mark, and I hope I'm not still doing this work in 4 more years as well. Okay. I don't want to rehash too much on the overview, but I would make a couple of points. Crandall Lane scales off to be about 30 foot in width in terms of the so-called right-of-way, and it does provide access to 4 residential uses over a mixed pavement and gravel surface. I would estimate the width of the road to be less than 20 feet, and it looks visually, looking in from Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road, to be in pretty lousy condition, which I think others have stated as well. This lot is situated in the Residential Farming and Rural Zoning District, which has an 80,000 square foot basic lot unit. And the site vicinity is all situated in residential zoning districts, either R1 to the north and west, and FR80 to the east and south. It was noted that the property is mostly wooded. Visually, it appears to me to be a mixed hardwood and evergreen. And there's a pretty large wetland on the easterly portion of the site, which extends off the site and has a stream running through it to other aspects. What was mentioned in brief by Mr. Gold, I believe, was site topography, and he made note of 7 to 18% slopes on the premises. It's a hill, and the hill portions of sites drain west and southwest towards residential areas along Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road, and ultimately to the Pawcatuck River, and easterly towards the jurisdictional wetlands on the other side. The adjoining residential uses off Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road are on a fairly level plane, and they look up easterly to the hill portions of AP2 Lot 1. The site is within the town's groundwater recharge and wellhead protection area, and I know there was some discussion about the natural heritage area. I won't dispute that one way or the other. It has been noted that they're seeking a commercial zone designation to allow for the solar farm on the premises. And as well, they're also seeking to change to the future land use map, which currently classifies this property and vicinity as low-density residential to a commercial designation. There's been several concepts shown, and I go into some detail in my memorandum on them, the original being a 3.9 megawatt DC solar installation on 15.32 acres with a fenced area of 17.9 acres. There's also a proposal for a subdivision, which was subject to questions by some of the council members, relative to either 2.2 acres or 2.3 acres, depending on what version of the plan you're looking at, for existing residential structures on the northwestern portion of the premises. The solar field itself is depicted on the west central portion of the site, and the original depiction consists of 11,588 modules. And there are three, the original site plan also shows three large detailed potential best management practice areas for runoff management, erosion control, and water quality purposes. These are depicted conceptually, but they're pretty large in size. And these BMP areas, and I think this is a significant point, are all situated directly behind the setbacks required under a commercial zoning designation, which is not the case currently on the premises. And as I made note, these adjoining properties are, excuse me, I'm getting some feedback.
Sorry, Mr. Murray. If you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute, *6. Thank you.
I am, oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I'll continue. I would make note that the commercial zoning designation allows for a 75% coverage of the premises. The existing zoning, RFR 80, has an allowance for 15% coverage. You know, I think that's a pretty significant difference in allowance of coverage, which would be, you know, the array itself or the fenced area or the disturbed areas or any impermeable surfaces. I would also make note that the zoning ordinance at section 6, dimensional regulations, in footnote number 1 said no commercial or manufacturing structure shall be located closer than 100 feet to a residential zone district boundary line. In my review of all of the different renditions of the plan submitted, structures, solar arrays, I mean, they may not be manufacturing, but they certainly are structural in character, are shown within this required setback. I would also make note that there are no commercial zone properties in the vicinity of Assessor's Plat 2, Lot 1. I would further note that construction of this facility would require cutting, removal, and grubbing of all trees and understory growth for the entire fenced compound of 17.9 acres under the original concept, or the lesser amount under the, I guess it was clearing areas 14.8 acres under the more recent concept from, I guess, last week. I made note earlier about Crandall Lane's narrow right-of-way, and I think it's certainly, and I think this was noted by the project engineer, it would be substandard to the access need of heavy vehicles during construction. Also, from the original application, the applicant was requesting a waiver of typically required traffic study, stating no traffic is anticipated to be using the site after the installation. I think that's a telling statement, because construction will result in heavy vehicle use of a private right-of-way off a rural character town road near its, that being Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road, near its intersection with Main Street. Given the slopes of the site and its location within the groundwater protection area, erosion control and drainage management would be of great concern, especially during construction and post-construction operating. The abutting residential uses, and this point was made by others, rely on private wells for potable water, and the site is, again, within that recharge and wellhead protection area. In my view, the application, even as revised, is bare bones in character, merely a placeholder to try to gain consideration under the so-called old PSES ordinance that was in place up until January 22nd, 2019. It is my professional opinion that this application does not provide even the scantest of basis to merit the zoning and comprehensive plan changes sought. I would also opine that rezoning of this property could very well be characterized as a spot zone, insofar as there's nothing in any kind of proximity to it that's commercially zoned. As a general comment, I would also make note that these plans in the electronic versions posted are difficult to read, and to print, I would say, even for experienced land use professional. I think for a residential abutter, the application materials would be confusing at best insofar as they are what you could call a moving target. Now, briefly with regard to the revised plan, they go from 3.9 megawatts to 3.5, and they reduce the number of arrays from 11,588 to 9,460, and reduce the clearing area to 14.8 acres and the fence compound to 14.3. But I would still say that 9,460, that's a lot of coverage on a property that would not be permitted, certainly under RFR 80 zoning district, and which it will remain abutting to if it were changed. The BMP areas are reduced, but they still remain pretty large, and they look to be about 50 feet wide and running several hundred feet on the west side of the array field, and the buffer that's maintained is only 25 feet, although some of the material submitted by the applicant indicates a 50-foot buffer, but that's not what the plans show. I would say the solar visual simulation dated August 7th proposes to demonstrate the approximate view. In my estimation, and this was mentioned by one of the councilors' questions, it doesn't reflect a winter view or the significant topographic differences of the existing residential areas to the proposed hillside, which would be comprised of nearly 9,500 arrays. Regarding the regulatory environment, the applicant maintains the governing ordinance for this proposed use would be the 2016 ordinance, which I call the old ordinance, which was then superseded in January of 2019. This chapter 246, non-residential photovoltaic solar energy system, allows this use by right in a commercial zoning district. Under its purpose and applicability, in part, the following is noted that the ordinance is intended to provide standards for the placement, design, and construction, monitoring, modification, or removal of PSES to further public safety and minimize impacts on scenic, natural, and historic resources of the town of Hopkinton. The town of Hopkinton encourages PSES in locations which provide the greatest potential energy generation while actively striving to minimize, emphasis added by myself, the visual impacts of these systems from streets and neighboring properties. It had been noted that the buffer that exists on other properties would help to minimize, and that may be true, but I don't think an applicant can count on neighboring properties, private properties, to maintain over time those buffers and kind of use them as their own. It's up to them to provide the proper buffers, not the neighboring properties that are pre-existing and used residentially purpose. In my estimation, this application does not meet the purpose intent of the old ordinance. It virtually consumes the buildable area on the westerly portion of the site. Its density is at odds with the established rural residential characteristics of this area. And the use, in my view, again, would negatively impact adjoining, established residential use and alter the character of this area in a negative fashion, affecting the quality of life of the existing residential uses in proximity to this premises. The old ordinance, so-called under Section C, design guidelines, notes the following. Again, talking about the minimization of adverse visual, safety, and environmental impacts. It also makes note that that the PSES should use colors, textures, screening, and landscaping that will blend the facility into the natural setting. The proposed PES shall be designed and will be constructed so that ground leveling is limited to those areas needed, so that the natural ground contour is preserved to the greatest extent practical. Also talks a bit about clearing of vegetation and that the PSES and equipment shall not have a significant impact on soils, water resources, air quality, or other natural resources of the land or surrounding area. Again, it is my opinion that the Centrica proposal, both as originally conceived and revised, does not meet the PSES design guidelines in the ordinance from 2016. This chapter also discusses minimizing visual impacts to neighboring uses in residentially zoned area, and I think it falls woefully short of the intent and standards contained in the whole of that prior ordinance. Now, as the council obviously and the town management team understands, on January 22nd, 2019, the town adopted a revised version which would replace the previous one in its entirety. This revised version contains a much more detailed land use policy environment for the consideration of this use. And among the changes are the following. The planning board would have the authority to increase building setbacks for the underlying zone. If the parcel is zoned RFR 80 and the applicant is seeking to rezone the parcel, then the maximum requested coverage may be the lesser of 3% or 3 acres. It also notes specifically, which I thought was pretty interesting, that RFR 80 rezone requests are not guaranteed approval. I think a lot of this, it appears that a lot of this new ordinance was adopted and revised based upon the experiences the town had with the 30-plus applications received for solar farm consideration. The new ordinance also encourages these uses on former gravel banks, brownfields, and landfills, and makes note that the location should be consistent with the Hopkinton comp plan. And again, it talks about minimization of visual impacts. The new ordinance also establishes a major land development review process for rezoned properties, which is more detailed process than development plan review, and it permits the planning board to recommend an appropriate lot coverage for the PSES based on the unique characteristics of the parcel and in a manner consistent with the comp plan. Also establishes limits on land clearing and cultural impacts and requires the preparation of an EIS, details buffering and screening standards and drainage management. The new chapter, 246, would not permit the Centrica Business Solutions project concept to proceed, even if the zoning map amendment and comprehensive plan future land use designation for the property were successfully changed. The project, even as revised, is several times the density of use that would be permitted under the revised PSES ordinance. Regarding the comprehensive plan, the Centrica application requests a change, as noted, to the future land use map, which is map 13, for low density residential, which supports the existing zoning of the parcel, RFR 80 and vicinity. In their initial application, they reference a 2010 comp plan and quote with a quotation from that. But you know, as the council is aware, the current comp plan is dated 2016 with state approval issued on March 27, 2018. I know the planning board, as everyone is aware, declined to endorse or prepare an alternative comprehensive plan amendment for council review on the Centrica application. The planning board found that the applicant's request should be denied based on a number of factors, including grossly inadequate setbacks, overburdening of a private road, sequence of the proposed development, including the proposed subdivision, and lack of consistency with the comprehensive plan. I would reference and refer to the planning board's opinion and findings, which are dated July 2nd, 2020, for the detail and well-considered recommendations provided therein. In my review of the planning board's decision, I would fully concur, with their well-conceived opinion. The board, as the entity responsible for the compilation and preparation of the plan, is expert in its content, intent, goals, policies, and implementation. The recent vintage of the plan adds to its gravity and relevance to land use issues today. Community residents and property owners should be able to rely on continuity of its policy environment. This application is not, as per the Planning Board's opinion and in my own, consistent with the general policies and objectives of the Hopkinton Comprehensive Community Plan. In addition to what the Planning Board had cited, I would cite the following plan goals and policies in the supporting of this review. Under the Recreation, Conservation, and Open Space chapter, Conservation Goal Con 1 is to promote the conservation of Hopkinton's natural resources, particularly protection of ground and surface waters. Policy Con 1 reads as follows: acknowledge that development in Hopkinton is and will continue to be without public water and sewer systems, and therefore it is critical to maintain development density within the safe carrying capacity of the landscape. Policy Con 2, restrict potential polluting land uses and intensive development within the primary groundwater and wellhead protection zone. Conservation Goal 2, to promote the conservation of Hopkinton's major natural features and its traditional rural character. Under the Natural and Cultural Resources chapter, natural resources, NR Goal 1 is to preserve, conserve, and protect the significant natural resources of Hopkinton as an endowment for the future of the town. Referring to the Comprehensive Plan Economic Development chapter, Objective ED3 talks about targeting specific types of business based on Hopkinton's quality of life and locational advantages balanced with business requirements and impacts to the environment. Now I'm going to briefly discuss the land use chapter as I begin to wrap up my discussion and testimony to the town council. In my memorandum, I provide detail on the descriptions of the commercial and residential land use categories that are depicted on the future land use map. The commercial category does not specifically define or include PSES, but it does discuss such uses as needing to be compatible with the rural heritage of the town and protective of the environment. The description of residential includes the following language: design, density, and form of development or redevelopment should be consistent with and compatible with the surrounding natural and built environments, particularly with respect to available infrastructure. Land use goal number 1 is to protect the quality of life and rural character of Hopkinton. Land use policy 2 indicates development will occur at locations and densities based on the environmental constraints of the land and consistent with the future land use map, which presently designates this property as low density residential. Policy LU3, developers will be required to show the environmental soundness of projects. The instant application is requesting significant relief and change to the town's primary regulatory vehicles for land use management. And I don't see evidence of soundness. In fact, Mr. Pimentel had indicated that they shouldn't be expected to do so, but I don't know how you make the decision to affirm their aspirations without a basis in fact. So you can't have it both ways, get a change, and then under development plan review, under the old ordinance, the planning board would be constrained significantly from changing anything with regard to the application. Objective land use 1, it talks about restriction of potential polluting land uses from areas over groundwater aquifers and groundwater recharge areas. So based upon my research and review and report, it is my professional opinion that this application is contrary to the overall community interests and aspirations as detailed in the Hopkinton Comprehensive Community Plan and zoning ordinance relative to non-residential photovoltaic solar energy systems. And I would state that for both the so-called old Chapter 246 and the new Chapter 246 in effect after January 22nd, 2019. It represents a commercial intensity and scale of use on a property situated in a rural residential neighborhood that is far beyond what would be permitted under existing zoning. And it wouldn't be permitted under existing zoning. Even as revised, the proposed use, in my view, is not appropriately scaled as per the purpose and intent of the town's solar energy ordinance. The requested zoning map change and competent plan amendments will alter the general character of the surrounding area and impair the intent and purpose of this chapter in the comprehensive plan upon which the chapter zoning is based. As stated in my memorandum, this position is fully supported by the review and opinion of the Hopkinton Planning Board. It was noted earlier that that was a unanimous vote of the Planning Board to recommend denial on both bases, comp plan and zoning. And as such, I would respectfully recommend that the Hopkinton Town Council deny the proposed zoning map and comprehensive plan amendment applications filed by Centrica Business Solutions and the property owner, Maitland Fothergill. I'd be happy to take any questions that folks may have, answer them to the best of my abilities.
Thanks, Mr. Murray. Yeah, we'll open it up for the council for any questions. Sharon,
Sure.
any questions for Mr. Murray?
No, I don't have any questions. I thought his memorandum was well done and well documented, and I agree with it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Anyone in the council chambers have any questions for Mr. Murray? I see Sylvia Thompson has some questions for Mr. Murray.
Actually, some comments. The comprehensive plan, as everyone has heard before, or perhaps there may be some who haven't, the comprehensive plan in one section specifically says the town should look to residential property to rezone for solar. We've done that. I don't think we can do any more, or I'm not willing to do any more. As Councilor Davis had said on more than one occasion, we've done more than enough. I agree. I don't want to mislead the applicant in any way. I want you to know that there isn't any modification, there isn't any change, anything you can do that will change my negative view. Hopkins, as far as I'm concerned, we're done. We've done enough. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. Scott, you have any questions for Mr. Murray? Speak into the microphone, please.
Scott Billhurst, Vice President. I think Sylvia spoke well to the issue. Yeah, I know I've lived in Ashley area all my life. My father was born on South Broad Street, which is not far from that area, and I think that the public sentiment is well known, and I think the planning board is a group of competent people. They voted unanimously against it, and I think it'd be very difficult to rebut the concerns articulated tonight. So we'll see if it can be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Barbara, any questions for Mr. Murray?
I had questions originally because, Mr. Murray, I did read your report in full. I feel like you've also read it in full again. You must think that we don't read these things. We do. If you want to send your memorandum to your abutters, please do. But I had read all of it. I understand your point of view. I don't agree with it. The questions I did have got answered earlier in the evening. I do not see in particular where you find density when this is a 49-acre piece of property, 46.6 acre piece of property. 14 acres will be used with 9 acres only in a solar array. So I do not understand your concept of density when we specifically in our comprehensive plan are looking for areas where we can do solar, mask it well, and keep it away from the major roads whenever possible. So I appreciate all your comments. I have read all of them. I don't necessarily need an answer on density because I don't think it has any value. And I would like to actually hear from our citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Murray? Okay, do you want Mr. Murray to comment? No, okay, she's all set, okay.
No, she said no, that's fine.
Oh, okay. Mr. Murray, I just had a quick question, a couple actually, one comment.
Yeah.
And when you were in South Kingstown, did you folks have a solar ordinance and did you help implement that? And if so, to what degree?
Well, I've been retired from South Kingstown for about 3 years, and one thing that we were doing in South Kingstown in cooperation with the University of Rhode Island and the town of Narragansett was to establish solar uses on former rehabilitated landfills at Rose Hill and at the university. So that was part of the experience. I know there was a kind of an avalanche of interest that kind of followed that, and there was various guidances issued by the statewide planning program to assist communities, which were, I think many communities were caught a little bit short in terms of how to deal with an emerging industry and technology, which often can be at a considerable scale. So my participation was working with Steve Alford and Vern Wyman at the university, both of whom have retired. And I think it was very, very successfully done on those rehabilitated landfill properties without, I mean, it was a good reuse of brownfield areas that had been rehabbed.
Sure, but nothing in residential uses, right?
No, I think South Kingstown has not had a great deal of it. There's been some accessory uses and farm properties. Thinking Carpenter Farm on Matunic Beach Road has a small bit of it. The old Whedon property over on Matunic Beach Road as well, and properties up on Rose Hill have limited that are accessory to the farm use as opposed to more of a principal use of the property.
Okay.
I think it's very important. This is Council Vice President Scott Billhurst. The town of South Kingston is one of the largest towns in geography in Rhode Island.
Can Mr. Hurst please speak into his microphone?
And
Yeah, he stole my thunder here, so go ahead, Scott.
okay, I stole his thunder, but I apologize, Frank. But I was going to say the town of South Kingston is one of the largest towns in Rhode Island in geographical area, and I just find it interesting. So I apologize for Frank for stealing your thunder.
Thank you, Scott.
No, you're not.
Anyway. And also,
actually, you're right. South Kingstown, I think, or Coventry, there's been a dispute about which is larger. If you consider inland water as part of the land area, then I think SK would be the largest town in the state.
now that we got that out of the way.
Well, you know I'm big on trivia anyways.
Anyway, but you know, one last comment. I know that there's been in your presentation, Mr. Murray, you'd mentioned, you know, various aspects of the planning board process, and you know, just so you know, and I've been advised through the solicitor's office throughout many projects that we've been encountered with in Hopkinton. The planning board advisory is just that. It's an advisory opinion. It's not a decision. So, you know, the council can do what it wishes. Doesn't need any we can go in a different direction, or we can take what they give us in their advisory opinion. So I want to make that clear. You may not agree with that, but I want to make that clear that that's been brought out before, that, you know, because there's not an approval from the planning board as far as an advisory opinion, that we need to, not review it and not take the project on its merits. So we can actually, as a legislative board, can decide to take that opinion or not, and render our own decisions as we see fit. So I just want to make that point for the record.
I understand your perspective on that, but I would just.
So we're going to hear from the abutters at any time tonight?
Again, if you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute.
I am speaking. Are we going to hear from the abutters tonight, or are we just going to hear from everybody else?
I don't know. I don't know who's speaking at this moment.
You cannot just speak during the meeting, please. We're not finished with the testimony. Mr. Murray, sorry.
I'd gladly defer to other aspects of the hearing if there's no other questions for myself.
Okay, thank you. All right, Stephen Surdette, I guess we have 15 minutes left.
Can we please hear from the abutters?
Again, we have 15 minutes.
Wait!
Darn,
We have-
now I'm flat.
All right. Now they're all muted, so that's problematic, because now I can't.
They can raise their hand if they want to talk. Star
All right.
9.
And this is
Sorry,
Sylvia. For any of those abutters out there, if there's anyone who's in favor of the proposal, I'd like to hear if there is any single abutter in favor of this. Thank you.
All right.
So what do they do? Wave their hand?
Hold on. Okay, if you're a direct abutter and receive notice on this particular project and wish to be heard, raise your hand, please.
Star 9.
Star 9. Oh, okay. I'm not going to necessarily go in order. It's this phone number 7990 star 9 to unmute your phone. I'm sorry, star 6 to unmute your phone.
Hey, this is Alan Ally, 21 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road.
Again, sir,
Yeah,
speak into your phone.
I talked about.
I can't hear you.
Hold on. Hold on.
Sir?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
State
This is
your
Alan
name.
Ally, 21 Old Hopkinton.
State your name, address, please.
Alan Ally.
And you're in a butter to the project?
Yes, I am. I'm on 21 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road.
Okay.
Okay. And again, this is directly affecting our property. They talk about the distance. They mentioned an average of 300 foot, but from the back of the property, that's only 50 foot. And again, that's, this woodland has nothing to do with what's going to happen to it in the off season. You talk about this water catchment that's supposed to prevent from runoff and flooding. Are they willing to accept the responsibility if there is flood damage? Are they going to accept that responsibility for property damage? In the water well, the same thing with that. Are they going to accept responsibility if my well water rather isn't sufficient? And Ed, this is to you. You mentioned about you've got to approve this thing before you can give a real estimate. It sounds real familiar, like we have to pass this bill before we know what's in it. I mean, let's be reasonable about this. You're not going to pass it then to try and look at it. You guys should know this ahead of time. I think that's all I have to say right now. But I'm sorry. The property for Crandall's Road. Again, it's not wide enough. Where are they going to get the extra to the width of that property? Who are they going to assess that from? It's only 20 feet now. It needs to be 30 feet. Okay, I think that's all I have to say at this moment. But again, it's totally opposing this, and I think that there's 99% of the people in this area are the same way. And if you're not going to listen to what we say, why even ask us? If our opinion doesn't matter, why even have the abutters say anything?
For like
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Okay. Well, again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is phone number 5653. Okay. State your name and address, please.
Robert Henninger, 24 Edgewood Avenue, Ashaway, Rhode Island. I just want to go on the record and say I'm totally opposed to any more solar, particularly directly behind my house. Like everybody else has mentioned, regardless of what we've been told, I've seen too many disaster stories with all the solar in town, and I'm very concerned for my well. I'm concerned for the wetlands. I'm concerned for the forest back there, and enough is enough. I just want to go on the record saying, I do not agree with this. I do not want this, and I hope the town council will take into consideration, the people of Hopkinton, especially the abutters to this project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Phone number ending in 2733. *6. Okay, you have the floor.
Hello.
State your name and address, please.
Oh, yeah. Hi. My name is Sherry Ally, 21 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road.
Okay.
I'm a direct abutter. And, here's one of my concerns. Like, I have many of them. But one of them is the fact that, several years ago, they were planning on putting out a cute little shopping plaza at the end of 95, but God forbid it didn't fit in the aesthetics of Ashaway. Well, at this point, just looking around my own community, I'm finding that we are becoming the solar farm of Rhode Island. I mean, I don't know how this aesthetic is fitting in with our little town of Ashaway. I find it very unappealing. And like the fact that you even are trying to forward this with giving us literally 10 minutes to respond to any of it is appalling to me. As a person that pays outrageous taxes for this community, has lived here for 15 years, I feel disregarded, disrespected, and very unhappy with what you're doing with our community. That's all I have to say at this moment. I am very happy with what the attorney has said for our side, also his expert, what he has laid upon you. And I really feel like, I just want to just say one more thing to my, the one fellow, I think was Jason Gold. If this was your backyard, would you allow them to put that into your backyard? I don't think so much. I'm thinking not so much. So I'm done speaking, and thank you for giving me my, oh, God forbid, 6 minutes left till you close the meeting. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Phone number ending in 8225. There you go. State your name and address, please.
Tim Stedman, 28 Edgewood Avenue, and I am a butter on the eastern side. 100% oppose this. First of all, I want to thank everybody for calling into the zoning board meeting and putting in their 2 cents. Quite a few things. They say that this thing is not a manufacturer business, but on a commercial piece of property. Solar is a manufacturing thing. He says you need machines to manufacture. You got machines clear cutting all the property. You got machines clear cutting, grading off the property, burning thousands of gallons of diesel fuel, which is supposed to be a green company for our awesome little town that we have here. There's quite a few things. For one, it's definitely not a good idea to put it on Crandall Lane. There, if you look at the map, almost 30% or 40% of that property is all wetlands.
and it's at the bottom of the hill that they're going to clear cut with all these machines, you know, leaking out oil and all that jazz. I know they're going to put in a buffer at the bottom, supposedly to catch all this stuff, but when it doesn't happen and it does go wrong and everything gets polluted into the wetlands, who's responsible and what's going to happen? My well probably feeds off that. I know my neighbors does for a fact. So are they going to supply us with a water system when this all goes south, which is a very good chance that it can? And the maintenance on the property, if it does go through, who does all the maintenance on around the solar? Are you going to put pesticides all on everything so the stuff's not growing? You're not going to get some guy in there weed whacking every 3 days. So you know that's not going to happen. So 100%, I don't want to waste anybody's more time. I'd like to hear some other comments myself, but 100% against it. And I think it's totally wrong to spot zone commercial in everybody's backyard, especially from a company that's in Maryland that's got nothing to do with this town or state for that fact. They should go back to Maryland and stay there. They want to put them in their own backyards, have at it, but it doesn't belong here. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, next, phone number ending in 0377. Yes,
Tim
yes, please.
Ward. And I am a trustee for 20 Amelia Street. So a few things. Number one, I am opposed to this project. And as Tim Stedman just said, I am also opposed to any more spot zoning. And I'd also like to refer back to something that the attorney, Mr. Ed, I think it was Pernantel, stated. And I carefully quoted part of his statement, which said, if we were vested, we would, and he was referring to the lot changes. So if they don't consider themselves vested, why are we here tonight? If they don't consider themselves vested, then this should be under the old regulations, and they have far exceeded the 15% coverage allowed under the old reg. So as far as I'm concerned, this meeting is done tonight because they don't even consider themselves vested. That's a direct quote. He said, if we were vested, we would, and again, referring to the lot changes. Also, Mr. Pennantel referred to the economics of the comp plan. I have asked the town council this on 2 prior occasions. So I'm going to ask a third time now that it's been several months. I asked on 2 prior occasions what the town council's goal was for financial gain and how much solar was enough. What was our ultimate goal? And the previous 2 answers were, Tim, we don't have a goal. We don't have a financial plan related to solar projects. We have not discussed this, but it's a good idea. That was your answer the last 2 times. I would like to hear tonight from the town council, what is your goal? Has this been discussed as a financial goal, and where are we at with that? Or is it the same answer as the last 2 times? That's all I have.
Okay, thanks.
But
Thanks,
I would like an answer.
Thanks, Tim. All right, we're getting to the witching hour here. We got one more call.
I'd like to make a motion that we extend the time and not close at 10, and that we at least go to 10:30 to get this done so we don't have to have another hearing.
All right. Oh, I work. Anyway. We have one person left in the queue. One.
Okay.
So
well,
we
then
don't have to go, we might not have to go to 10:30 is my point.
Okay. All right. Well, there is a motion on the floor.
Motion was made and seconded to extend the time frame.
I think we ought to extend it just to make sure everybody gets their time.
There's one more person in the queue.
Okay, we can all, I think it's still fine to go till 10:30. We
And if-
can obviously end at 10:10 or
All
10:05.
right, whatever.
Yep.
Take the vote.
Motion was made and seconded. All those in favor extending the time?
Aye.
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 Not in
Aye.
favor of it?
Okay.
All right. All right. Phone number ending in 7990. Yeah, just state your name and
Hello?
address, please.
Susan Frank, 17 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road.
Yep.
And I just want to say I absolutely disagree with everything that's been going on with all of the different meetings that we've had. It seemed as though the last time around, legal for the other side was not prepared, and the abutters didn't get to speak, and that was a meeting that we should have been able to speak at that point too. Definitely opposed for this, and I guess that's all I have to say for now, and hopefully this doesn't continue.
Okay. Phone number ending in 0377. Yeah, we just had that one. Yeah, I got to get to someone.
Yeah, so
Again, you've already spoken. Who's this?
This is Tim Ward again.
Yeah, Tim.
And I'm hoping I'm going to get an answer to my two questions from the
Yeah,
town council.
I got to hear from the rest of the folks that have their hands up that haven't spoken yet, Tim. Phone number ending in 6981. Phone number ending in 6981, please. Oh, there you are.
Hello?
Yes, hi. Please
Can
state
you
your
hear me?
name. Yeah, we can. State your name and
Yes.
address, please.
Jean Clementi, Tamaqua Road.
Yeah.
I think you've probably already responded to my email, but seeing I got through, I'm going to speak. I am definitely against this. I'm not a abutter, but I just feel like we've had enough of solar already in this town. I know the planning board is against this, and it seems like the majority of the residents don't want it. And I'm just a little tired of having to be on the phone and listen to these meetings for the same old thing. So I'm hoping that the town council takes in favor of what the residents really want here. And I appreciate this time to be able to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Phone number ending in 7990. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Brenda Williams, 90 Hopkinton Cemetery Road,
Yes.
Ashway. I just think it's disgusting that what you're going to do with our property. We have lived there for so many years, and you know what? My grandmother was her cousin that owned the property at the Crandall Farm. So as far as I'm concerned, they would never want that to happen to that property. They would want it to be either lived on or have a farm, but there would be no way that they would want to have a solar field. So, you know, just look out for everybody else. I thought there was going to be no more zone changing, but I hope you're not going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, looks like Joe, you out there? Ending 8222?
Hi, this is Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. Good evening, everyone. You know, I listened to the entire planning board meeting on Wednesday, July 1st, regarding this project, and I know at least 2 town council members were there also. I'll say it again, that was the most confusing explanation of a solar project I have heard after 3.5 hours the meeting was over. This ESS group letter was dated January 4th, 2019, and the town date stamped it January 7th, 2019. It's been 19 months since that town date stamped the letter. And there isn't any doubt in my mind that the developer's point was to beat the date of the new PSES of January 22nd, 2019. Those that listened to the planning board heard our town planner question if this project is in fact grandfathered under the old PSES ordinance dated July 18, 2016. A new set of plans was submitted after the abutters notification letters were mailed. That was part of the confusion at the planning board meeting. The letter from the ES group dated January 4th, 19 lists several points under existing conditions, starts with the location of the project. It says, and I quote, currently the site consists of vacant wooded land with the exception of a residential development enclosed within another lot. Goes on to say the area includes wetlands and a river. The property is located within a flood zone and a wellhead protected area. In my opinion, when you change the original plans, this project falls under the PSES dated 1/22/19, as questioned by our town planner. This council voted against another project which also had 2 homes on it and proposed to change part of it to commercial for solar. At a recent council meeting, Sherry from Building and Zoning said there were some outstanding issues with zoning with this project, and she was having a difficult time getting answers to that question. One of the other points I want to make, and I believe Doug had said this, that it's not manufacturing. Maybe if Doug is out of state, he's not familiar with a case in June 2018, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. It was decided by a judge where solar is definitely manufacturing. And what this judge used was, he used an example of a previous case with wind turbines. It transforms raw material, namely wind, into a finished product, namely electricity. The raw material with solar is the sun, the finished product, namely electricity. It is definitely a manufacturing. The other thing I want to point out is Doug was very good about throwing out all these great numbers. I was really impressed with the town, paying the town's electric bill and the $5, $6, $7 million, whatever all these numbers were. And I was glad to hear Councilor Davis challenge him on this, because it wasn't based on facts when you listen to it. None of our electric bills were looked at. We're just throwing out numbers. Please state the facts. Doug, I believe, stated that was talking about the state's goals on renewable energy. I'm so glad that Sylvia and Sharon Davis stated the fact that we've done more than our fair share in the little town of Hopkinton, Rhode Island. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I just want to leave you with this one final thought. Please keep Hopkinton country. Thank you.
Okay. Phone number ending in 2997.
Hi, this is Eric Bibler. Can you hear me?
Yes, Eric. Yep.
Okay. Well, there was a lot said tonight that I believe was inaccurate, and some other things that I think deserve to be highlighted. I want to start by just quickly highlighting what Attorney Squires said. He said, first of all, he cited the state statute that says that the planning board shall have the sole authority for the administration of the comp plan and the amendment of it. Secondly, he said this project isn't vested under the old ordinance, and it can't possibly be, because of the fact that it not only has it not achieved the, and not only has it not received approval at the first application stage of the planning process, it has not even submitted an application, and it can't submit an application because the use that it's pursuing is not permitted in the zone that it currently resides, which is residential. And the third thing Mr. Squires noted was that this procedure through the town council is not following the state statute and the Hopkinton town ordinance for precedence of approval, which says that it gets the advisory opinion from the planning board first, and then it can't even come to the town council until after it has approval at the first stage of the planning process, which it has not done because it hasn't applied. Now, I'm not going to argue the legal points because I'm not a lawyer, but I just want to remind the town council that you have heard these arguments before. You're going to hear them in Superior Court again. You've got 2 lawsuits pending against you, and now you have another attorney that doesn't agree with our town solicitor. That might bear some checking. We heard from Mr. Pimentel that spot zoning is an urgent legend. That is a crock. It's not true that spot zoning is not illegal and that it's not that the comprehensive plan has no bearing in terms of the appropriateness of development relative to the surrounding uses, as Mr. Murray and Mr. Squires were at pains to tell you. Once again, we heard Mr. Pimentel, who is a regular on the Hopkinton circuit on behalf of developers, badly distorting the law and the rules that apply, and also badly distorting the comp plan. We heard him cite or refer to under, I guess it's energy goals in the comp plan, energy goals and policies. Once again, not for the first time, he took completely out of context policy PSF 17, encourage renewable energy projects in the private sector. And then recommendation 18, consider expanding the current zoning regulations to allow photovoltaic installations in residential districts. Councillor Thompson made reference to this yet again, and Councillor Landolfi has frequently made reference to this as a justification for installing commercial photovoltaic projects in residential zones, saying that the comp plan says that the town should look to residential property to develop solar energy. Councillor Thompson said we did that, we've done enough, etc. Mr. Pimentel said that the comp plan anticipates zoning individual residential properties for solar development because of the fact that most of the town is RFR 80. That is completely false. This says once again, consider expanding the current zoning regulations to allow photovoltaic installations in residential districts. Consider changing the zoning, responsibility planning board, time frame, 3 to 4 years. We did that. We had endless hearings on the solar ordinance, which resulted on January 22nd, 2019, after due consideration of how and if and when and whether to expand change the zoning and expand the development in residential districts. What did we conclude? Through a joint effort of the planning board and the town council, we concluded that anytime residential property is rezoned for commercial use, for solar use, it should be limited to the lesser of 3% or 3 acres. But at no time then, when the comp plan was written, by the way, that's far more restrictive than the ordinance that they want to be heard under tonight, which is the incorrect one, which is the old one. But at no point in time was there ever any word in the comp plan about spot zoning, considering individual parcels of residential property surrounded by other residential parcels. There was never any authority granted to this town council or any other town council to evaluate properties on a case-by-case basis in the residential zone to determine on the merits of any individual project whether or not any of these should be spot zoned for solar use. This was an overarching instruction to consider whether or not to change the zoning of the town, and we elected to make it more restrictive, not less so. And we did not change the zoning, and ground-mounted solar development is a prohibited use in the residential zone, period, end of story. And if you want another reference point for how that process was supposed to proceed, recommendation 19, the one that follows it under the energy section, is to consider a zoning ordinance to permit wind energy projects in appropriate zoning districts. Responsibility, the planning board. Time frame, 1 to 2 years. We did that too. The planning board considered whether or not to allow wind energy projects in any zone in Hopkinton, and they said no, they weren't going to change that. It is not a permitted use in any zone, and in fact, the town council followed up by making it a prohibited use in every zone. So this is how a comp plan is administered. This is how zoning proceeds. It doesn't proceed in a piecemeal fashion, on a case-by-case basis, neighborhood by neighborhood, torturing one group of abutters after another, and having 5 people on the town council ignore the body in town that by state statute is granted, quote unquote, the sole authority for the administration of the comp plan, choosing to ignore them and choosing to ignore, if they wish, our own ordinance that requires a supermajority to override them. Now, I know that the town council and was backed by the Superior Court in saying that they could ignore that ordinance or that it wasn't enforceable. But the fact is that ordinance has been on our books for 30 years, and this town council has routinely simply chosen to violate it because they said they could. I'm going to move on here. I just want to say the planning board voted unanimously against this. They cited valid reasons in the comp plan. The only thin rail here, or thin straw that the developers and some town council members are trying to balance and some sort of authority to approve spot zoning on, is that clause that I just mentioned. If you read the comp plan from beginning to end, you will find in the very beginning a discussion of the formulation of the plan and how it came about. What the residents wanted for the town was determined through a years-long public participation process, included surveys and public hearings. And it says, quote, the public participation process has indicated residents are strongly in favor of maintaining the rural character of Hopkinton. This reason, followed by scenic beauty, was identified as the primary reason why residents chose to live in Hopkinton. You go through every single section. I don't care whether it's energy or housing or municipal development or anything else. Everywhere in every section, there are policy goals and land use goals that say that the overarching goal in every form of development is to avoid rampant infrastructure for energy and also to avoid developmental sprawl. And here you are considering, I don't know whether it's the 30th or the 32nd or the 36th, I don't know how many of these projects that you have had in front of you, as if it were legitimate for you to ignore the planning board, to ignore the precedence of approvals, ignore the comprehensive plan, and then determine you 5 people acting completely in defiance of what your constituents are telling you that they want, and to determine, like God, whether or not you can ignore the comprehensive plan and go ahead and greenlight one more instance of solar sprawl. Lastly, I don't know who said it on part of the developer, but he addressed the question of whether or not solar development is a manufacturing use, and he said absolutely not, because there are no machines involved. Well, he's not a lawyer, clearly. That's completely false. I would refer him to the Rhode Island Supreme Court decision of January 14th, 2016, D. Pasquale.
Point of order. I think this has gone on long enough. It's been It's been more than 10 minutes.
I'll be done in 2 minutes.
It's been more than 10 minutes already.
Excuse me.
It's been more than 10 minutes already.
Eric, conclude quickly, please.
I will. I'll cite these 2 cases for the edification of the developer. Supreme Court, January 14th, 2016, D. Pasquale versus Zwick. found that wind energy was manufacturing, and then the Superior Court, citing the same decision in July 27th, 2018, Fontaine versus Town of Portsmouth, found that commercial solar energy, yes, indeed, is a manufacturing use of land, relying on the Supreme Court decision 2 years earlier. So there are two court precedents that say in no uncertain terms, yes, in fact, this is a manufacturing use of land. Thank you.
Okay.
Could I interrupt? I'd like to interject in reference to Tim Ward. We
didn't get in trouble.
Are you? Have they been muted?
Yep.
Yeah. This is Sylvia Thompson. Tim, if you're still out there, I think it's clear, perhaps to some, that the majority of the council is no longer approving these solar projects. I've unfortunately been put into the position of being that third vote, and I'm not going for these things anymore. So there's your answer, Tim. We've got enough money. Sure, love to have more, but we can't do any more to the community. We've done enough residential solar. I've made that clear tonight. Eric Bibler can change the narrative. He can speak to. He can speak to everything. It's so difficult to listen to Eric Bibler insult people on the council when right now you should know, Eric, that we're not going to go for this proposal, but yet you insult us and twist words and change the narrative and pick and choose and say things that are not true. Thank you.
All right, so we're all set with that. We're just
I'm
about.
unmuted. We can talk to them. Oh.
Do we have a motion to continue or close the hearing, please?
Move that we close the hearing. This is Sylvia Thompson.
Seconded.
We can set a date for a decision? Or just close it?
Just close it,
Okay.
and then we'll have to talk.
Okay.
talk
Frank,
Yes, Sharon.
I did also want to answer that gentleman who wanted to know if we had a goal. I think probably in the back of our minds at the beginning, we probably thought we wanted to replace 100% of our energy, which is like 98 megawatts. And we have surpassed that. So I think with Sylvia that we're done. Okay, I just wanted him to know that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion made to close the hearing. Was it seconded?
Yeah, I seconded.
Okay, Scott seconded it, okay. All those in favor signify by saying your name and say aye or no.
Scott Bill Hirsch,
Sharon
aye.
Davis, aye.
Sylvia Thompson, aye.
Barbara Capalvo, aye.
Franklin Dolphy, aye. All right, the motion was made and seconded and approved to close the hearing.
No, we have to come up with a date.
Yeah, so we have to wait for the transcript.
Yeah, so I don't know how long that's
have they
gonna
been-
take. 3 weeks at least.
Maybe we should do that October.
Let's do that.
That October 7th meeting, the first meeting, or 5th, whatever that, the first meeting in October?
In September.
No, I can't do it in September, Barbara.
No, I mean,
October.
can't we make a decision next month?
It was the 5th.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen Sturden.
Wait for the transcript.
Yes, Steve.
I know.
We did reserve the right to conclude, and we've also been asked by members of the town council to come back with additional information.
Yep.
So, and I apologize, I was trying to get through earlier prior to the council addressing the last motion.
Well,
but
the
I do believe that it is.
hearing's being closed, so
Yeah,
you,
but he did reserve the right to.
well, that's too bad. We're going to
Well,
close the hearing.
again, Kevin, you want to weigh in on this? I tried texting you, but you didn't get back to me.
I think we've heard everything we need to hear.
Hold on.
We can determine what's true and not.
Hold on. I have to try and get a hold of Kevin.
So maybe October.
I put everybody.
Would work.
Kevin, you out there, star 6. Kevin,
Doesn't matter. We can make it. We can pick a date tonight.
we still talking. I gotta find Kevin here. It's usually 3 weeks, guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. The stenographer is online.
Frank, this is Kevin McAllister.
Yeah, Kevin, hi.
Hi. The council has voted unanimously to close the public hearing. The fact that Attorney Sirdutt reserved his rights to sum up or whatever does not override the council's vote to close the public hearing. If the council wants to revisit its vote, it can do so now by a motion and second and vote to reconsider that vote. They can do that. But otherwise, the council's vote stands.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure.
I am willing to reconsider the vote. This is Barbara Capalbo. We are going to finish at 10:30. Mr. Sirdutt, if you can finish in the next 5 minutes so that we close and find a hearing date by 10:30, I would be willing to listen to you. Otherwise, if my compatriots do not want to listen, I'm fine with that. But if you can finish in 5 minutes, I am willing to at least open the hearing long enough for you to speak if it is extraordinarily short.
Then that would be a motion.
I don't want to. This is Sharon.
Sharon,
So
we have
I
to
will
have a-
make a motion that we open the hearing to listen to Attorney Sirdutt, and we will close this hearing
It's 3 minutes, 10:27.
at 10:27.
Well, it's 10:27 now. You have
We
3
will-
minutes.
Whatever.
Good. Whatever.
Stephen?
Oh, wait a minute. There's a motion on
Oh,
the
I'm
floor.
sorry.
There's no second. I don't hear a second.
Okay. Motion was made and no second, so the motion fails.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so a date, oh.
But does this mean they could just reopen it?
I don't know.
I'm trying to, Barbara. I mean, Jesus. I mean, every time I do it, it seems to come back on.
It's his technology, probably.
I don't know. Anyway. All right, so where are we?
Okay, yep, that's my question.
What's the question?
We have no more questions.
That was the court reporter, it's the court report, I just wondered what was going on.
We're trying to decide, we closed the hearing. We're trying to decide what date we need to set aside for a decision. When would the transcripts be ready? 3 weeks from now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would that work the second meeting in September, perhaps? Would that give us enough time?
That would be the 21st, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's like 5 weeks.
The Shorenza decision is on that day too.
Yeah, we're just making the decision on tonight.
Yeah, Shorenza and Hawkins Compassion.
Which date are you choosing?
21st of
September 21st, we could
Okay.
make the decision because that's more than 3 weeks and it's only a decision.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's not a
I know.
hearing.
As long as she's okay with that, I guess. She said
Okay.
3 weeks.
All right.
All right. All right, so we set the date for a decision of 9/21 next month. Second meeting in September. All right, thanks all. We need a motion.
Mr.
to adjourn.
President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn in memory of Joyce L. Kreider, George A. Pierce Jr., Gene M. Place, David M. Smith, and Francis V. Wujik Jr.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, Frank, I didn't know you have to work early.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, folks. Good night.